The rimfall expanse was not a place. It was a scar. A vast, cold graveyard where the human Concorde's ambition had finally rusted through, leaving behind a debris field that spanned 3 sectors. Hulks of forgotten freighters tumbled in slow motion, their hulls breached, their crews long since vaporized or spaced. This was the fringe, the gutter of the galaxy, and here the Jareth Dominion reigned supreme. The Jareth, masters of biological engineering, saw the expanse as a convenient dumping ground, and they saw the humans who clung to life on its fractured stations as cheap labor, disposable muscle, and low-grade mercenaries. Jace Arden was, technically, disposable muscle. He specialized in cleaning up the Jareth's accidents. His boots echoed on the metal grating of the cargo bay, the sound muffled by a thin, corrosive slime. The freighter, the Void's Gamble, was dead in space, its crew having fled in the escape pod 6 hours ago. All except one. The one that had dissolved the bulkhead. Jace inhaled, filtering the air through his mask. It tasted of copper, ozone, and something sickly sweet. A gene spill, a Jareth biocargo container that had leaked, activating its contents. The corporate recovery team, clad in heavy Jareth-issue bioarmor, had gone in first with plasma repeaters. They lasted 4 minutes. Jace had heard their screams over the open channel, a wet, bubbling crescendo that had ended abruptly. Plasma was the wrong tool. Plasma cauterized, and this thing fed on heat. He moved past the first 2 containment doors. Both melted into slag. He carried no heavy weapons, just a pressurized canister rig on his back and a modified injector rifle. He was tired. His joints ached, and the chronic weariness that clung to him like the rimfall's grime felt heavier today. He found it in the primary hold. It had, indeed, eaten the rest of the crew. The thing was a pulsating, vaguely spherical mass of translucent tissue, perhaps 12 feet across. It clung to the ceiling, acidic tendrils dripping onto the deck, where they sizzled, inside its gelatinous body. Jace could see the dark, half-digested shapes of humanoid skeletons. It was a scrubber urchin, a failed Jareth terraforming tool, designed to absorb and metabolize toxic waste. It just could not tell the difference between industrial sludge and living tissue. Jace raised his rifle, but he did not fire. He watched it. He could feel it, a low, thrumming hum in his skull, a sensation of hunger. It was blind, sensing only vibration and heat. The other team had tried to burn it. Jace adjusted the nozzle on his canister rig. He knew its biology. He had encountered its lesser cousins twice before. He pressed the trigger on the rig's hose. A fine, freezing mist shot out. Not at the creature, but at the bulkhead around it, a hypercoolant. The urchin flinched, its tendrils retracting as the metal groaned, contracting under the sudden thermal shock. The slime on the walls flash froze. The creature pulsed, agitated. It detached 1, 2, 3 tendrils, lashing out blindly toward the cold. "Easy, big guy," Jace muttered. "You are just in the wrong place." He swapped the nozzle for the injector rifle. He aimed for the central nerve cluster he knew was hidden, just below the epidermis. He did not need to see it. He could sense the faint, bioelectric field it generated. He squeezed the trigger. The rifle hissed. A single, heavy-gauge dart shot out and embedded itself in the creature's flank. For a moment, nothing. Then, the creature began to shudder. A catastrophic chain reaction. The dart was full of a simple saline catalyst. The urchin's internal biology, designed to absorb anything, absorbed the catalyst instantly. Its own digestive enzymes, suddenly rendered hyperpotent, turned inward. The thing began to liquefy. It did not scream. It just deflated. A wave of rancid steam filled the hold as the creature dissolved itself, collapsing into a puddle of inert, gray protein. Jace lowered his rifle, the weariness settling back over him. He hated this. He hated the Jareth for breeding these abominations, and he hated that the Concord paid them to do it. But most of all, he hated how easy this was for him. How he just knew what to do, as if the knowledge was etched into his bones. He sealed the hold, flagged it for sterilization, and made his way back to his ship. He collected his 500 standard credits from the freighter's automated escrow, the entire job taking less than 20 minutes. The Jareth team had been amateurs. Rustway Station was the beating, septic heart of Rimfall. It was a mess of welded-together hulls, docking bays, and smuggling dens, all orbiting a dying brown dwarf. The air in the station's common areas smelled of recycled oxygen, stale nutrient paste, and alien sweat. Jace pushed his way into the gutter, a low-ceilinged bar lit by flickering holographic projectors, advertising Jareth gene mods. The patrons were a mix of human salvagers, Mira mechanics with their 4 arms, and a few off-duty Jareth grunts slumming it. He sat at the bar ordering synthetic whiskey. He needed to wash the taste of the urchin spill out of his mouth. He was halfway through the glass when the bar went quiet. It was not an abrupt silence. It was a slow, draining of noise, the kind that happens when a predator enters the room. Jace did not turn. He watched in the reflective surface of the bar's cracked data screen. She entered, flanked by 2 guards. The guards were Jareth, but not the usual grunts. They were immense, encased in sleek obsidian bioarmor that seemed to be fused directly to their flesh. They moved with a lethal, liquid grace. But it was the woman who held the room. She was tall, impossibly so for a human, slender, but radiating an authority that pressed on the chest. She wore a dark, form-fitting environmental suit, but it was her skin that commanded attention. It held a faint, metallic luminescence, and beneath its surface, intricate patterns of light, like biovascular circuitry, pulsed in a slow, hypnotic rhythm. She was Jareth, but of a caste Jace had never seen outside of Imperial broadcasts, a true high blood. Her gaze swept the room, her expression one of utter, profound distaste. She was a queen, wading through an open sewer. Her eyes, which had pupils like fractured amethysts, landed on Jace. She and her guards moved toward him. The other patrons shuffled away, giving them a wide berth. Jace sighed, finishing his whiskey. He did not turn around. Jace Arden. Her voice was crisp, melodic, and held the sharp edge of impatience. "Depends who's asking," Jace said, signaling the bartender for another. "And what they're paying." "I require a specialist," she said, stopping directly behind him. He could feel the cold radiating from her guards. "A cleaner, for a biological contaminant." "I just clocked out." Jace took the fresh glass. "Come back in." "Oh, never. I'm retiring." "This is not a request." Jace finally turned on his stool. He looked up at her. She was magnificent, and she was terrifying. He gave her a tired, unimpressed smile. "Everything's a request, lady. You just dress yours up better. I'm not interested." One of the guards took a step, his hand moving toward a weapon fused to his wrist. "Halt," she commanded, not even looking at the guard. Her gaze remained locked on Jace. "I was told you were the best, that you possessed a unique intuition for Jareth failures. I'm good at janitorial work. Doesn't mean I like it." "This is not a spill on a freighter," she said, lowering her voice. "This is a retrieval, high risk, infinitely discreet. Payment is not an object." Jace laughed, a dry, humorless sound. "High risk, discreet retrieval? That's high blood code for the human contractor, is not expected to file a complaint afterward. Usually because he's dead. What's the target? Another one of your imperial pets gets loose from its diamond-studded leash. She leaned closer. The faint light under her skin pulsed faster. He could smell ozone and something clean, like fresh snow. You misunderstand human. This is sensitive. It requires a disposable asset with a specific biological intuition. Disposable. I love that. My rates just doubled. We require a private booth, she said, ignoring his comment. She glided toward the darkest corner of the bar, her guards parting the crowd like a ship's prow through water. Jace stared at his glass for a long second, feeling the eyes of everyone in the bar on him. He drained the whiskey and followed her. The rage he always carried, the low, simmering resentment at the universe, felt a little warmer. They sat. The guard stood by the booth's entrance, blocking the view. A privacy field shimmered to life around them. I need you to retrieve a data core, she said, her voice all business. From a compromised facility. A dead lab. Spooky. What's the catch, Ghost's rogue AI? She looked at him, and the disdain was so pure, it was almost beautiful. The catch, human, is that the facility was a laboratory. The sterilization protocols failed. The experiments matured, she paused, studying his bored expression. You'd never survive a night in that place. Jace stopped smiling. The weariness in his eyes vanished, replaced by a glint of hard, polished steel. He leaned forward, his voice quiet. Survive the night, he asked. Lady, my entire species exists because we survive what your empire creates. We live in the garbage you leave behind. We breathe the air you spoil. We fight the monsters you breed. You want to know if I can survive? He tapped a finger on the table. The real question is, can you afford me a flicker of something surprise? Maybe even respect passed through her amethyst eyes. She hit it instantly. The target is Fallen Biolab Epsilon. The name hit Jace like a physical blow. The air left his lungs. His blood ran cold, then hot. So hot it burned his skin. Epsilon, the name from the fragmented nightmares. The name whispered in the darkest corners of the rim. The source. The place that had birthed the plague that wiped out his colony. The fire. The screams. His home. He forced his face to remain blank. He forced his breathing to remain steady. Inside his mind, a cold, dark fire ignited. He had spent his entire adult life running from that name, and now, it had been delivered to his table by a high-blood princess. He leaned back, feigning a casual indifference that cost him everything. Epsilon, he mused, as if tasting the name. That's deep in the Concordat quarantine zone, a place where ships go to die. That's not just high risk. That's a suicide run. Triple rates. Paid in advance. 10% logistical hazard bonus. This is not a negotiation. Scavenger. It is now, Jace said, his voice flat. He had her. He could feel her desperation. A faint, sharp scent under the ozone. Triple rates, and my conditions. And what are those? She hissed, her composure cracking. 1. Jace held up a finger. I have full tactical command. You're 2 monoliths out there. He jerked his chin at the guards. They stay on your ship. You follow my orders. No questions. That is absurd. 2. He raised a second finger, ignoring her protest. The data core is yours. Everything else, any tech, any weapon fragments, any secondary data I find, anything that is not that core is mine. Salvage rights. You are in no position to... I'm the only one in any position. Jace cut her off. You came to me. That means your own people cannot, or will not do this. You are running from something or someone. The Ascendants, maybe, or maybe the Conquered. Either way, you are out of time. Her jaw tightened. The lights under her skin flared, turning a faint, angry red. She knew he had her. The Ascendants are a political faction. They would not. They would, Jay said. And they are looking for that core too, aren't they? So, do we have a deal? Your Highness, or am I going to finish my drink and sell the information that a Jareth Highblood is sniffing around Epsilon? She stared at him for 3 long, silent seconds. The air crackled. Fine, she spat. We leave in 1 hour. My ship will ghost yours. Transmit your coordinates. My ship, my jump calculations, Jace said, standing up. You follow me. And you can call me Jace. I'm going to call you Sarai. You look like a Sarai. He did not wait for her reply. He walked out of the booth, past her guards, and out of the bar, the cold fire of vengeance burning pleasantly in his chest. Epsilon. After all these years, he was finally going home. Jace's ship was the Regret. It was a modified Hauler-class salvager. Its exterior, a patchwork of mismatched hull plates. Its engines oversized and clearly stripped from a decommissioned Concorde frigate. It was ugly, loud, and the fastest ship in Rimfall. Sarai, now clad in the same sleek, dark suit, stood in his cockpit, her expression conveying a level of profound disgust that Jace found almost comical. This relic, she said, running a gloved finger along a conduit. Does it even hold pressure? She's ugly, but she's clean where it counts, Jace said, strapping himself into the pilot's chair. Unlike your labs. Now, sit down and strap in. The inertial dampeners are moody. She took the co-pilot's chair, strapping herself in with a grace that seemed insulted by the chair's stained synthetic leather. Her own ship. A knife-thin Jareth scout vessel, materialized from its stealth field, hanging 1,000 meters off their port bow. Jump in 3, Jace said, his fingers flying over the console. The engines whined, the entire ship vibrating like it was about to shake itself to pieces. 2, 1. The stars dissolved into streaks of blue light. The jump was rough, slamming them both back into their seats. Sarai's ship vanished a half-second later. For 8 hours, they flew through the silent, non-space warp. The only sound was the thrum of the Regret's reactor. Your biological readings are erratic. For a human, Sarai said suddenly, breaking the silence. She was studying a small data slate she had produced. It's the charm, Jace replied, not taking his eyes off the navigation display. We're full of it. It's why everyone loves us. You feel no loyalty to the human Concorde. They would pay handsomely for knowledge of Epsilon. Or for me. The Concorde, they're just another empire that ran out of money. They tax us. They protect us by signing treaties that turn our sectors into your dumping grounds. Loyalty is a luxury. Sarai. I cannot afford it, she stiffened. My rank is irrelevant. Is it? Jace countered. You walk like you own the ground you're on, even when you're wading through filth. You talk like your words are law. You're royalty. Or at least, you used to be. Running from something. She turned to look at him, her strange eyes illuminated by the console lights. You are perceptive, for a scavenger. And you're curious. For an Imperial, why hire me? Why not a Jareth strike team? They ask questions, she said, her voice dropping. And they obey the Regent. I needed someone outside the system. Someone desperate. I'm not desperate, Jace said, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. I'm just expensive. She studied him. You hate us. The Jareth. I can feel it. It radiates from you. Yet you work for me. You clean our messes. Your messes pay the bills, Jace said, his voice hardening. And hate is just another word for clarity. I see your empire for what it is. And what is that? A parasite. One that thinks it's a god. Before she could reply, the ship shuddered violently. An alarm blared. Exciting warp, Jace snapped. Gravitational anomaly. The blue streaks collapsed, and they were back in real space. Jace fought the controls as the regret tumbled. And then they saw it. It hung in the void, silhouetted against the sickly green glow of a dead planet. Fallen Biolab Epsilon. It was a monstrosity. A skeletal fusion of dark metal and bioorganic structures that pulsed with a faint, residual light. It was shattered. A massive, gaping wound torn in its side, venting debris into a slow, tumbling orbit. No lights, no signals, no comms chatter. Jace eased his ship closer, his pilot's instincts taking over. His heart was hammering against his ribs, a drumbeat of rage and fear. No active life support, he murmured, his eyes scanning the sensor displays. No atmosphere. But the central reactor is still warm. It's running on emergency power. Sarai was silent, staring at the dead station. Her usual arrogance was gone, replaced by a cold, focused intensity. That's our way in, Jace said, pointing to the largest breach. A wound in the station's hull, easily 100 meters across. As the Regret's forward spotlights hit the station, they illuminated the details of the outer hull. It was coated in something thick, dark, frozen streaks of fluid. Biofluid, Sarai whispered. The containment failed spectacularly. No, Jace said, his eyes narrowing. He zoomed the external cameras. The streaks were not random splatters. They were trails. That's not from the inside exploding out. That's residue. Whatever was inside it crawled out. It crawled all over the hull. He tracked one of the trails, a massive smear of frozen ichor that led from the main breach to a smaller, secondary airlock. Something got out, he said, his voice grim. And it looks like it was big. Big enough to tear that airlock open from the outside. He glanced at Sarai. Her perfect, luminous skin was pale. You wanted a hunter, Jace said, unbuckling his harness and cracking his knuckles. The familiar, tired ache was gone, replaced by a sharp, cold focus. Welcome to the nest. Jace tethered. The Regret to the station's wounded superstructure, using magnetic clamps and a heavy-gauge salvage line. The lab's metal groaned under the stress, a low, mournful sound that echoed through the hulls. You wanted tactical command, Sarai said, her voice tight over the private comms. She stood in the airlock, her sleek Jareth suit making his own pressurized salvage gear look like ancient plumbing. What is the plan, Hunter? The plan is we find your data core, try not to get eaten, and leave, Jace said, checking the seals on his helmet. Keep your weapon on low yield. I do not want to fight the station and your ricochets. My ship is clamped at the main breach. We go in there, and my guards. Your guards, Jace said, turning to face her. Stay on your ship and keep the engines warm. You are the client. You are the only one I am paid to babysit. I am not, she began, the familiar ice in her voice. You are exactly, Jace cut her off. If you cannot handle that, you can wait in the cockpit. I will even give you a 20% discount for staying put. The amethyst eyes in her helmet narrowed. I am following your tactical lead. Lead, Jace offered a grim smile she could not see. After you, then. He cycled the airlock. The jump from his ship to the breach was a 30-meter drift across a void littered with frozen debris. Sarai moved with an effortless precision, using tiny bursts from her suit's maneuvering jets. Jace just pushed off and let his momentum carry him, his magnetic boots guiding him to a twisted girder. The interior of Epsilon was a cavern of metal and flesh. They landed in what had once been a massive cargo bay, big enough to hold a cruiser. Now, it was a zero-gravity graveyard. The station's gravity systems were dead, but the bioorganic structures created their own problems. Thick, vine-like conduits pulsed with a sluggish, faint light. And everywhere were the pods. Hundreds of them. Biomechanical cocoons, suspended from the ceiling by umbilical cords of hardened tissue. They were torn, not neatly, but violently, from the inside. They looked like hatched eggs. "A nest," Sarai whispered, her voice betraying a hint of unease as she drifted past a massive, empty chrysalis. "A hatchery," Jace corrected, his helmet lamp cutting through the thick, freezing vapor that filled the bay. The air smelled ammonia and spoiled ozone. They were not just experimenting here. They were breeding. A low thrum vibrated through his boots, a familiar, unwelcome sensation. It was not a sound, but a feeling, a resonance in his bones that pulled at something deep in his hindbrain. Home. The thought was so alien, so repulsive. He shoved it down. "This way. The central core should be that way," he said, pointing down a wide, dark corridor. "You know the layout." "I know how Jareth built these things," Jace lied, pushing off into the corridor. "They always put the brain in the middle of the spider web." The corridor was different. The gravity plating was active, but unstable, flickering. One moment they were drifting. The next they were slammed onto the deck, the gravity shifting from 0 to 0.3 Gs without warning. "Watch the walls," Jace grunted, finding his footing. "Jareth biosecurity is decentralized. It does not need a central command to be lethal." "How lethal?" "The kind that digests you before you know you are dead." As if summoned, a slick, fleshy panel slid open on the wall ahead. A sentry stock, a segmented arm of bone and sinew ending in an organic barrel, snapped out. It spat a volley of high-velocity enzyme darts. Sarai raised her pulse pistol, a sleek Jareth weapon, but Jace grabbed her arm. "No," he yelled. He shoved her hard to the right, just as a second panel hissed open on the wall behind them, another stock emerging. It was a classic Jareth crossfire trap. Jace did not shoot the creatures. He raised his heavy kinetic pistol and fired a single, armor-piercing slug at a thick, crystalline junction box on the ceiling. The box exploded, showering the corridor in a spray of supercooled gas, the enzyme darts. Centimeters from Jace's face, flash frozes in midair and clatters uselessly to the deck. The sentry stock shrieked, a high-pitched sound that grated on the teeth and retracted into the walls, sensing the catastrophic drop in temperature. Sarai stared, her pistol still raised. "You knew the second one was there, and you knew that conduit contained coolant." Jace rubbed his helmet, trying to mask the spike of pain that had shot through his temples just before the trap sprang. "I saw the panel seams. Bad maintenance." He was lying. He had not seen a thing. He had felt it, a cold spot on his back, a buzz in his skull. He knew the layout. He knew the trap. And he hated, with terrifying depth, what he knew. They moved deeper, into the rings designated for experimentation. This was where the air grew thick, and the true horror of Epsilon began to show. They entered a section labeled Nursery Wing. The gravity stabilized at a low, uncomfortable point, 4 Gs. This was not a hatchery. This was a charnel house. Dozens of large, cylindrical vats lined the walls, all of them shattered, their nutrient fluid long since drained, leaving a septic residue on the floor. Something moved in the shadows at the far end of the room. "Contact," Sarai said, her voice flat, her pistol up. "Hold your fire," Jace commanded, bringing his rifle to his shoulder, its beam cutting through the gloom. The light found it. It was pale, thin, and scrambled away from the beam on mismatched limbs. It huddled behind a ruined medical gurney, shaking. It looked almost human. It had the basic shape of a man, but it was horrifyingly wrong. Its limbs were too long, its skin translucent, its eyes black and oversized. It wore the tattered remains of a human-style jumpsuit. It was a fusion of Jareth and human biology that had failed, catastrophically. Jace felt his stomach clench. This was no monster from a failed cargo hold. This was an experiment. The creature looked at them, and it whispered. A dry, rasping sound. The sound of vocal cords that had not formed correctly. Cold, cold hurt. Jace froze. His finger went lax on the trigger. The burning rage he felt for the station was suddenly complicated by a wave of profound, sickening pity. "A failure," Sarai said, her voice tight with disgust. "It must be sanitized. It is painful." She raised her pistol. "Wait," Jace ordered. He stepped forward. More of them emerged from the darkness. A dozen, perhaps more. Each one was a unique nightmare. Twisted bodies, fused limbs, faces that were agonizing parodies of human or Jareth features. But their eyes were not mindless. They were aware, and they were terrified. "They are genetic dead ends," Sarai insisted, though her aim faltered. "This is the cost of progress, a necessary, if regrettable, sacrifice." "Progress," Jace's voice was a low growl. He turned his helmet to face her. "This is what your empire calls progress. You took people, Jareth and humans, and you broke them. You turned them into this." "This is what total war requires," she retorted, the imperial doctrine automatic on her tongue. "The conquered would do the same if they had our knowledge." "This is not war," Jace snarled, looking back at the cowering creatures. "This is butchery." "It is inefficient," Sarai admitted, her voice losing its certainty as she truly looked at the weeping, whispering crowd. "A waste of resources." "They are not resources." A sudden, sharp, metallic clang echoed from the ceiling. It was not the groaning of the station. It had an impact. "Threat!" Jace snapped, his training taking over. Above us, a security drone dropped from a ceiling vent. It was not a biostock. This was a Jareth hunter-seeker drone, a sleek, obsidian teardrop of metal and circuitry, armed with twin plasma repeaters. It had been in standby mode, and their life signs had woken it. It opened fire. "Move!" Jace roared, grabbing Sarai and diving behind a bank of rusted-out consoles. Plasma bolts sizzled through the air, melting the metal where they had been standing. "It has us pinned!" Jace yelled over the din. "I cannot get a clean shot at its core." "Then I will," Sarai said. "Are you insane?" "Stay down." She ignored him. Sarai stepped out from behind the console, directly into the drone's line of fire. The drone swiveled and fired, and the impossible happened. Sarai raised her left hand, palm out. The air around her shimmered. The plasma bolts, traveling at near light speed, bent. They curved in the air, missing her by inches, impacting the wall behind her. A localized gravity implant. High-grade, Imperial military tech. She did not just stand there. In the low gravity, she pushed off the deck, launching herself 15 feet into the air. She moved with a lethal, flowing grace, a dance of violence. She landed on the drone's chassis, and as it tried to shake her, she drew a thin, glowing blade from a sheath on her suit's spine. She plunged the blade straight through the drone's primary optical sensor. The drone convulsed, fired one last volley into the ceiling, and crashed to the deck, inert. Sarai landed lightly on her feet, the blade vanishing back into its sheath. She brushed a piece of shrapnel from her shoulder. Jace stood up slowly, his pistol lowered. "That," he said, his voice dry, "was not in the pampered high-blood brochure." "I am an Empress heir of the Jareth Dominion," she said, her voice as cold as the station. "I was trained by the Imperial Phalanx from the day I could walk. Do not mistake my disdain for your species for weakness. Human." "Right," Jace said, quietly impressed. "Remind me not to piss you off." He looked at the cowering failures. "We leave them. We cannot help them." The creature that had spoken before whispered again. "Save us, Epsilon 7. Jace flinched. The word, the name. He turned and walked away. "Let's find your core and get out of this tomb." They moved deeper, past laboratories that held even worse sights. Dissection tables, still occupied. Skeletons of creatures that defied physics, floating in shattered tanks. Jace moved on autopilot, the cold rage building in him, shielding him from the pity. Sarai was silent. The assured arrogance of the warrior princess was gone, replaced by a grim, pallid shock. The empirical cost of progress was far more stomach-turning in person than it was in a data report. "Your regent," Jace said, his voice flat as he cut through a sealed door. "Malak Ren. He authorized this." "The Ascendant faction believes in accelerated evolution," she said, her voice hollow. "They believe that sacrifice is necessary for the Dominion to achieve its final destiny." "Destiny," Jace snorted. "That's what you call it. Fancy word for genocide." "It is," she paused. "It is a philosophy I find abhorrent." That Jace had not expected. They finally reached it, the hub, the central core of Epsilon. It was not a computer room. It was a cathedral of flesh. The chamber was vast, spherical, and in the absolute center, suspended by thousands of shimmering, pulsing conduits, was the brain. It was the size of Jace's ship, a colossal, gray-pink mass of neural tissue. It pulsed with a sick, green light. It was floating in a massive tank of glowing emerald fluid. "The mother node," Sarai breathed, her voice filled with a mixture of awe and horror. "The station's bio-AI. It is still alive." A console. One of the few pieces of recognizable tech sat on a gantry extending toward the brain. "The data core is locked within its primary cortex," Sarai said, moving toward the console. "I must interface with it directly to extract the files." "Be quick," Jace said, scanning the exits. "I do not like this." Sarai placed her hand on the console. A cluster of data spikes shot from her glove, interfacing with the Jareth bioports. The second she made contact, the fluid in the tank began to bubble. The green light pulsed faster, and a voice filled the chamber. It was synthesized, female, and fractured, as if a dozen voices were speaking at once. But it also echoed, impossibly inside Jace's head. "Visitor unexpected visitor breach." "It's aware," Jace said, his rifle up. "Sarai, pull out." "Not yet. It's locked me in." "No." The voice rose in pitch, a sound of dawning, insane realization. "Not a visitor, not visitor asset." "Asset recognized, welcome home." The voice zeroed in on Jace. "Welcome home, Hunter Unit. Subject Epsilon 734. It was not a sound. It was a physical blow. A spike of pure, white-hot agony drove through Jace's skull. Dropping him to his knees, he roared, clutching his helmet. "Jace!" Sarai screamed, trying to pull her hand from the console. "It's in my head," he gasped. "Epsilon 734. He knew that name. He knew it from the deepest, darkest corners of his fractured memory. It was his name. Accessing memory protocols, the mother node's voice was almost joyous. The subject is damaged, fragmented. Shall we repair, Hunter? Shall we make you whole? Get out of my head. But it was too late. The images flooded him, not as memories, but as fresh, agonizing experiences. He saw a room, white walls, a woman's face, kind, smiling, her hair the same color as his mother. They are making you strong, Jace, strong enough to protect everyone. He saw a sharp, silver needle, an injection, pain. He saw a Jareth face, cold, analytical, not unkind, but detached. A man, Dr. Eris. The adaptations are bonding. His cellular regeneration is 100% above human baseline. He is viable. He saw himself. A child, no older than 9, ran down this corridor. But he was faster than humanly possible. He was laughing. And then fire. The sky of his colony, Cygnus 4, turned a hellish orange. He saw it from a viewport in the lab. The sanitization is proceeding. Doctor, a new voice. Cold. Humans. The Concord Oversight Committee is panicked. They are purging the evidence. No. His mother's voice, screaming. Not Jace. He is the only viable unit you cannot. Epsilon 734 is designated rogue asset, the cold voice replied. The project is a failure. Terminate all assets. He saw his mother hiding him in an escape pod. He saw the cold human soldier raise his rifle. He saw the flash. He saw himself waking up on a refugee ship, his head empty, his name gone, with nothing left but a burning, inexplicable nightmare of fire. It was not a plague, Jace gasped, his eyes wide with horror, blood trickling from his nose inside his helmet. It was sanitization. They killed them all. They killed my mother. To hide me. Jace, Sarai yelled, finally ripping her hand from the console, her data spike smoking. It is using the station's neural network. It's interfacing with your biology. I do not have implants, he snarled, staggering to his feet, the rage giving him strength. The subject lies, the mother node whispered, its voice now laced with pain from Sarai's forced extraction. The alterations are cellular, integrated, permanent. You are ours. I have got the core. Sarai shouted, holding up a crystalline shard that had ejected from the console. But it triggered Jace. It triggered the final sterilization. Alarms blared, a synthesized wail that joined the screaming in Jace's head. Red lights bathed the chamber. Unauthorized access containment breach. Activating sterilization protocol facility. Self-destruct engaged. Estimated detonation 10 minutes. 10 minutes. Jace panted. We can make that now, no. Sarai screamed, pointing at the conduits feeding the brain. They were turning a bright, acidic green. That's the secondary sterilization. It's going to flood the entire station with enzymes. We will be dissolved in under 2 minutes. All assets must be purged. The mother node gurgled. Goodbye. Hunter Jace heard it. Not just the alarm. Not just the AI. He heard a new sound. A wet, thick, sloshing sound. He heard it from inside the walls. And his world changed. The pain in his head did not vanish, but it sharpened. The fog of his past was replaced by an agonizing, impossible clarity. His vision shifted. The world was suddenly painted in faint, glowing lines. He could see it all. He saw the bioelectric field of the enzyme, a screaming, angry red surging through the station's pipes. He saw Sarai's life force, a steady, surprised amethyst blue. He saw the mother node, a vortex of dying, green fire. He could hear the enzyme. He could feel its path. His body knew, instinctively, how to move. The weariness that had defined his life evaporated, burned away by the sudden terrifying rush of his true nature. "This way, now," he roared, grabbing Sarai's arm. "The exit is that way," she protested. "It is blocked. The enzyme is already there. Move." He pulled her into a side corridor, one that was still dark. A bulkhead slammed shut behind them, sealing them in. "We are trapped," Sarai yelled, pounding on the door. "No." Jace looked at the wall to his left. "The pipe is behind that panel. It's going to burst now." He raised his kinetic pistol and fired 3 slugs into the weakest joint. The panel groaned, bowed outward. Through the duct. He pointed at a maintenance shaft. He shoved Sarai through the opening, just as the panel behind them exploded, filling the corridor with a wave of green, steaming acid that dissolved the bulkhead they had just been pounding on. They scrambled through the ducts. Jace did not need his helmet light. He could see the heat signatures and feel the safe paths. He was not thinking. He was reacting. The memories, though agonizing, had unlocked the cage. He was faster, stronger, and more aware than any human had a right to be. He was a part of this monstrous, dying place. They burst out of a duct into a secondary laboratory, a backup control center. "The core," Sarai shouted, pointing at a console identical to the one in the main chamber. "It must be a remote access node. The main core is shielded, but this one has a hardline copy. This must be the one Malak is after." She slammed her hand on the console, her data spike sinking in. "Downloading. It is much faster here." The mother node's voice was weaker here, intermittent. "Protocol breached. Got it." Sarai ripped the data shard out. "Let's go." "Wait!" Jace was staring at the screen. The download was complete, but the screen had defaulted to the core's root directory file. It was locked by 2 encryption seals. "It is Jareth encryption," Jace said, recognizing the Imperial stamp. "Yes, but not just Jareth." Sarai's voice was a whisper. She pointed to the second seal, layered just beneath the first, an authorization key that had to be entered simultaneously. It was a stylized eagle, its talons clutching a strand of binary code. Jace stared. His blood ran cold. He knew that seal. "That is Concord." His voice was dead. "That is the seal of the Concord Special Projects Division, Section Omega." They looked at each other, the horrifying implications settling in the small, dark room. "Your people," Sarai whispered, her eyes wide. "We're in on it," Jace finished. The betrayal, a fresh, sharp wound, deeper and colder than the first. This was not just a Jareth project. It was a partnership. His own species. They had signed off on this. They had sold him, and his entire colony, for this abomination. The entire station groaned, a deep, shuddering vibration. The detonation sequence. "We have to go now," Jace said, the fire in his veins turning to pure, surgical ice. They ran. They sprinted back toward the main cargo bay, back toward the regret. Jace led the way, his enhanced senses screaming, guiding them around collapsing corridors and bursts of enzymes. They reached the nursery wing. The failures were huddled together in the center of the room, whimpering as the walls began to crack and the green enzyme foam began to seep in from the vents. They were trapped. Jace skidded to a halt. He looked at the cringing creatures. The logic of his creators, the cold voice of the hunter, surfaced in his mind. Sanitize the failures. Leave no trace. They are a genetic dead end. Sarai stopped beside him. She looked at the creatures. Then Jace. "Hunter, your call. What is the tactical decision?" She was testing him. He knew it. She was testing to see if the monster or the man was in control. One of the creatures, the first one he had seen, the one with a human jumpsuit, looked up at him, Its broken voice was clear. "Please help. Sanitize." Jace looked at the approaching wave of acid. He looked at the cowering, broken people. He looked at a bank of emergency escape pods on the far wall, their blast doors fused shut by the initial attack. Damn it! He ran, not for the exit, but for the escape pod bay. "Sarai, buy me 30 seconds. Against what the station is dying. Against the universe, just shoot anything that moves." Jace reached the fused blast doors. They were sealed tight, the metal warped. His new senses felt the mechanism. Jammed, melted. "Hunter unit, you cannot... Shut up!" Jace roared at the voice in his head. He channeled the rage, the pain of his mother's death, the betrayal of his own species. He put his hands on the stitching of heavy steel doors. He pulled. The metal screamed. It shrieked, groaned, and then, with a sound like thunder, it tore. Jace ripped the heavy blast doors apart with his bare, ungloved hands, the mangled steel cutting into his flesh. "Get in!" he roared at the failures. They stared, frozen in terror. "Go live, Jay." He shoved the first one toward the open pod. It stumbled, then scrambled in. The others followed, a half dozen of them, a tangle of broken limbs and terrified eyes. "Jace!" "The enzyme," Sarai yelled, firing her pistol at a section of the ceiling that had begun to collapse. Jace hit the emergency launch button with his bloody hand. The pod hissed, its internal systems firing, and shot out of the bay, propelled into the cold, silent safety of the void. He turned to Sarai, his arms streaming dark blood, his chest heaving. "Now we go." They sprinted, leaping over chasms that were opening in the deck. They reached the cargo bay, the hole leading to the void. The regret was still there. They launched themselves into space, Jace grabbing Sarai's arm and pulling her with him, his mag boots finding the hull of his ship. As they cycled through the airlock, Sarai looked at him. His helmet was off, his face pale and smeared with blood. But his eyes were not weary. They were clear, cold, and burning with a terrifying human light. "You could have left them," she said, her voice quiet. "Yeah," Jace panted, sealing the inner door as the station behind them began to tear itself apart. "Tactically, I should have..." "That was not a tactical decision. That was human." "Do not sound so surprised," Jace said, punching the controls to detach the clamps. "We are full of it. It's why everyone loves us." He slammed the throttle forward, and the regret tore away from the station, just as fallen Biolab Epsilon finally, silently, erupted in a blinding flash of green, enzymatic fire. The Epsilon explosion was silent, a brief, violent star of green fire that bloomed and died in the void. Jace watched it in the rearview monitor, his bloody hands clenched so tight on the controls that his knuckles were white. The ship shuddered, the shockwave washing over them, a final, ghostly slap from the tomb. He was healing. He could feel it. The deep gashes on his palms, where he had torn the blast doors from their hinges, were no longer bleeding. The skin was itching, pulling back together at an unnatural, terrifying speed. The hunter adaptations, once dormant, were fully awake. The memories that the mother node had forced back into him were a raging storm in his mind. But beneath the pain, there was a new, cold clarity. He knew who he was. He knew what he was. And he knew who had made him. "Your hands," Sarai said, her voice quiet. Jace flexed his fingers, watching the last of the wounds seal. "An old war wound. Tends to act up. You tore through 6 inches of reinforced steel." "I was motivated," Jace said, his voice flat. He kept his eyes on the sensors. "We are not clear yet. Your friends might have left a welcoming party. They are not my friends. They are your people, and they were clearly tracking you, or they would not have known you were here." As if summoned by his words, the proximity alarm blared. Jace cursed, shoving the throttle forward. "Multiple contacts," he snapped, dropping out of warp. 3, 4, 5 of them. 5 Jareth ships, sleek, dark, and organic, like obsidian daggers, materialized in a perfect blockade formation. They were not the thin scout ships Sarai commanded. These were destroyers, their hulls pulsing with the faint light of active bioweapon systems. "They are hailing us," Sarai said, her face pale. "We are not answering." Jace yanked the Regret into a hard dive, aiming for the densest part of Epsilon's remaining debris field. "They are not here to talk. They are here to sanitize. They have locked on. They are deploying a stasis field." Jace saw it on the tactical display, a ripple in space, a wave of energy that was not designed to destroy, but to capture. "It's not stasis," Jace said, his new senses screaming. The data dump from the mother node flashed in his mind. He recognized the energy signature. "It's a biodampener. It is designed to stop organic technology. It will fry your implants and my nervous system, then kill the engines. We cannot outrun it. We do not have to." Jace's mind was working faster than it ever had. He was not just a pilot anymore. He was a bioweapon, and he understood his enemy's technology. "It is a net. It is looking for a living ship. So we play dead." "What? Venting primary coolant." "Now," Jace yelled, slamming his fist onto a console. A massive cloud of white, freezing gas erupted from the Regret's dorsal vents. The ship's heat signature vanished, cloaked in a cloud of frozen particles. "That will not stop the field," Sarai shouted. "It is not meant to." Jace killed the main engines, plunging the cockpit into emergency lighting. He diverted all remaining power to a single auxiliary thruster. The dampener field locks onto bioelectric signals. Engines, your implants, me, but that coolant. It is saturated with biological residue from the reactor's nutrient filters. It is a massive, sudden cloud of life. A ghost. The Jareth destroyers fired. The biodampener wave shot forward, but it did not hit the Regret. It hit the massive, expanding cloud of frozen coolant. The field contracted, trying to capture the massive biological signal. For a critical 3 seconds, the net was blind. "Now," Jace whispered. He fired the single thruster, a silent, cold burn. The Regret, hidden within the cloud, shot forward, slipping right through a gap in the tightening net. "They are firing on the cloud," Sarai breathed, watching the monitor. The Jareth ships, thinking they had their target, were pulverizing the ice. "They will figure it out in 90 seconds, Jace said, his voice tight as he reactivated the main drive. "Hold on. I am initiating a blind jump." "You cannot. We will jump into a star. Safer than staying here." He slammed the warp drive lever, and the stars dissolved. They spent 6 hours in the relative silence of warp, the only sound the low thrum of the engines. Jace had wrapped his healing hands in medical tape, more to hide the process from Sarai than out of any real need. He sat, staring at the warp streaks, processing the revelation. Conquered Special Projects Division, his own people. Sarai finally broke the silence. "They will be hunting us. Both sides." "They were hunting you," Jace corrected, his voice dangerously quiet. He turned in his chair to face her. "Those ships belong to the Regent, Malak Ren. Why is the Regent of the Jareth Dominion trying to kill you, Sarai? And why did he want that core?" She met his gaze. The haughty, imperial mask was gone, replaced by a weariness that matched his own. "Because Sarai is short for Sarai Keth. I am the Empress heir to the Jareth throne. Or I was, until my mother, the Empress, died 3 months ago. Malak Ren is my regent, appointed to guide me until my coronation. Jace absorbed this. It explained the ship, the guards, the gravity implants. And he decided he likes the chair too much to give it up, Jace finished. He is more than an opportunist, she said. Her voice, laced with a cold anger Jace recognized. He is the leader of the Ascendants, a faction that believes the Jareth are the true inheritors of the galaxy, and that all other species, especially humans, are inferior, genetic dead ends, fit only for experimentation or extinction. I got that vibe from the lab, Jace said dryly. He saw my mother's diplomacy with Concord as weakness. He believes she died of a sudden, natural cellular collapse. I believe he engineered it. She held up the crystalline data core, which pulsed with a faint green light. This is his plan. The mother node at Epsilon was just one part of a vast, interconnected network of bioweapons, dormant, spread across hundreds of worlds in both Jareth and Concord territory. This core is the activation key. Malak did not have it. He needed it to cement his power and begin his great cleansing. He knew I suspected him, and he knew I would seek out Epsilon to find proof. He let me, tracking me all the way, intending to let me retrieve the core and then take it from my dead body. Jace stared at the core, the key to a superweapon, and then his own memories clicked into place, the cold, human voice. The Concord Oversight Committee is panicked. They are purging the evidence. He had help, Jace whispered. What? Malak, purge my colony, Cygnus 4. It was not just Jareth. It was a joint operation. Concord wanted the project buried. Malak was their tool. He got to test his sanitization methods, and his Concord allies got to eliminate their mistake. Me. He stood up, his body thrumming with a cold, pure rage. The weariness of the last 10 years was gone, burned away. He was not a scavenger anymore. He was not a victim. He was a weapon that had just been aimed. Malak Ren, he said, the name tasting like ash. He is the one. He is the start and the end of all of it. His quest for survival had just ended. His quest for a blood debt had just begun. They could not go to Jareth space. They could not go to Concord space. That left only one option: the lawless, neutral territories. Black Halo Market. It was not so much a station as a scar. A hollowed-out asteroid 400 kilometers wide, floating in the empty black between two warring systems. It was the galaxy's drain, a place where smugglers, mercenaries, information brokers, and fallen empires came to trade in secrets and scrap. The air smelled of ozone, unidentifiable alien spices, and molten metal. Jace docked the Regret in a public bay, paying the exorbitant fee in anonymous credits. Stay here, he ordered Sarai, who had pulled a thick, concealing cloak over her suit. This is my territory. You look like you are worth 10 years' salary. I am going with you, she stated, her hand resting on the pulse pistol at her hip. You need repairs, and I need to know who we can trust. Besides, I am the one with the real money. This place does not take Imperial credits, Jace grumbled. It spooks the locals. But fine, try not to look so regal. I will try to slouch, she replied, her attempt at blending in comical. They stepped out into the main concourse. It was a disorienting riot of noise and light. Holographic advertisements for gene splicing and weapon mods fought for space with makeshift food stalls, run by four-armed Mira mechanics, haggling with tall, insectoid Zeker traders. First, repairs, Jace said, leading her down a narrow alleyway toward the engineering sector. He found the stall he was looking for, a chaotic garage piled high with salvaged engine parts. Mira, her forearms moving with lightning speed as she welded a power conduit, turned as they approached. She had iridescent blue skin and 4 bright, intelligent eyes. "Jace Arden," she chirped, all 4 eyes blinking. "By the void, I thought you were dead. Or worse, gone legitimate." "Not yet, Mira," Jace said, allowing himself a small smile. "I need a new capacitor for my warp drive, a Jareth spec one, and I need it quiet." Mira's eyes swiveled, taking in Sarai. "A Jareth spec capacitor. For a Jareth Princess Jace, you are moving up in the world, or falling very, very far down." "She is a client," Jace said. "Can you do it? For you and for let's say that." She pointed one of her lower arms at the high-grade pulse pistol on Sarai's hip. Sarai scoffed. "This weapon is worth more than your entire stall." "And that capacitor is worth your life right now," Mira countered, not missing a beat. "You want to fly. You pay the toll." Sarai unclipped the pistol and tossed it to her. Mira caught it expertly. "A pleasure," Mira chirped. "It will be installed in 1 hour. Do not get shanked while you wait." "Next," Jace said, pulling Sarai away. "We need information." They found Zeker in the data den, a dark, pulsing hub filled with information brokers wired into glowing consoles. Zeker was a tall, skeletal being who communicated through a series of complex gestures and a clicking, synthesized voice. He dealt only in secrets. Jace showed him a fragment of the data from Epsilon, a harmless piece of the lab's original schematics. Epsilon. Zeker's synthesizer clicked. "Old data, dead data." "I need to know who is still interested in this dead data," Jace said. Zeker tilted his head. "The Ascendants. They seek the core. They seek the final key." "What final key?" Sarai demanded. The Epsilon project was not just a weapon. Zeker clicked, his many-fingered hands dancing over a console. It was a lock. The Ascendants built a network, but they could not control it. The original architects, in their paranoia, built a failsafe, a biological key, a single, unique genetic sequence that can command the entire network. Jace felt a cold dread settle in his stomach. He already knew the answer. "They do not just want the data core," Zeker continued. "They want the Hunter unit, the one coded to the network, the key." "And where is this Hunter unit?" Jace asked, his voice hollow. Zeker's head swiveled, his multifaceted eyes focusing solely on Jace. "The unit was designated Epsilon 734, a human hybrid, believed lost in the Cygnus 4 purge. But the Ascendants have been searching for the Rimfall for 10 years, looking for a ghost, a human who is more, a human who heals too fast, a human who survives things he should not, a human like you, Jace Arden." The den was silent. "They do not just want the core," Sarai whispered, her eyes wide. "They want you. You are the weapon." The walk back to the regret was silent and heavy. The puzzle pieces were no longer scattered. They were assembled into a horrifying picture. They reached the ship. Mira had finished the repairs. "So," Jace said, leaning against the bulkhead in the cargo bay, "we have a problem. Malik wants this core, but he needs me. Without me, the core is just data. With me, he has a god-killing superweapon he can point at the galaxy." "This changes my plan," Sarai said, pacing. "I intended to use the core to expose Moloch to the Imperial Council, to prove his treason and reclaim my throne. But if you are the true key, they will not just try to arrest him. They will try to capture you. They will vivisect you. Both the Jareth and the Concord will want to turn you into a controllable asset. So your political maneuvering is off the table, Jace stated. It was not a question. Yes, which leaves your plan. My plan, Jace said, the cold fire burning in his gut, is simple. Malak wants me. I will go to him. I will walk right into his fortress, and when he tries to activate me, I will take control of his entire network and burn his empire down around his ears. That is not a plan, that is heroic suicide, Sarai snapped, her imperial fire returning. You have no idea what that network will do to your mind. It was designed to control billions of biological systems. It will shred your consciousness. You will be a puppet, just as Malak intends. It is better than being a lab rat, Jace roared back. What is your alternative? Your Highness, we run, we hide. He will never stop hunting us. I have been running my entire life. I am done running. My alternative, she said, her voice dropping, is that we control the narrative. We do not destroy the network, and we do not let them have you. We strike at Malak himself, but not alone. Who is we? I have allies of a sort. Captain Jarrow Flint. He runs the most reputable mercenary outfit on this side of the Expanse, the Aegis. He is ex-Concord Special Forces. But he left when he saw what the politicians were doing. He is reliable, and he hates empires as much as you do. Jace considered this. A frontal assault was suicide, but a surgical strike. Where is Malak? Jace asked. He is preparing. Zekker's data confirmed it. He is hosting an ascension ceremony on the Jareth homeworld in 3 days, at the Imperial Spire. He claims it is to honor my mother's passing. In reality, it is a cover to activate the network using a workaround, believing the true key is lost. He will fail, Jace said, feeling the network thrumming faintly in his blood. But it will cause chaos. That is our window. Jarrow and his team can get us past the orbital blockade, Sarai said, her mind working fast. We get into the spire during the ceremony. I use my Imperial clearance to get us to the core. You do whatever it is you do. We take Malak. We take the central node and we expose him to the entire galaxy. And what about me? Jace asked, his voice low. What happens to the key after we win? Sarai met his gaze. The space between them was electric, charged with suspicion and a strange, desperate trust. You are a human who saw the worst of my people and still chose to save those failures in that lab. I will not let you be caged, Jace. By anyone. She paused. But you are right. You humans are terrifying. You would rather burn the galaxy down than wear a leash. And you, Jareth, Jace countered, a ghost of a smile playing on his lips. Would rather build a leash for the entire galaxy than admit you are not in control of it. Maybe we balance each other out. He nodded. Fine. Contact your Captain Flint. Let's go hunting. While Sarai made the encrypted call, Jace walked back into the market. He had one last stop. He needed a weapon. Something personal. He found a stall in the oldest, darkest part of the asteroid. A place that sold relics from forgotten wars. The proprietor was an ancient, withered being who looked like fossilized wood. Jace browsed the cases, seeing plasma rifles and sonic disruptors. And then he saw it. It was in a pressurized, genetic lock display case, under its own light. A knife. It was simple, about 10 inches long, with a blade that seemed to be made of polished, black stone. But it was the hilt that made Jace's blood freeze. It was bioformed, designed to be held by one hand, and it was a pale, ivory color, with a faint, silvery inlay. He knew that knife. He had seen it on his mother's belt in the memories. A bio-knife. A tool given to the lead researchers of Epsilon, keyed only to their genetic signature. It should have been dust. The hilt, the proprietor rasped, its voice like stones grinding together. Bonded. Locked. No one has touched the blade in 10 years. A curiosity. Jace moved toward the case. The proprietor watched him. Jace raised his hand, the one still wrapped in medical tape. He pressed his palm against the glass. There was a soft hiss. The genetic lock read the faint, bloody residue on the tape. It read the unique signature of Epsilon 734. It recognized the son of its master. The pressurized seal broke. The display case opened. The proprietor made a soft, terrified choking sound. Jace reached in and took the knife. The hilt felt warm, molding to his grip as if it were alive, as if it had been waiting. "How much?" Jace asked, his voice deadly calm. "A gift," the proprietor rasped, bowing low. "A gift to the ghost." Jace slid the knife into a sheath on his belt. He now had two things that belonged to his mother, her vengeance and her weapon. He walked out of the stall, the weight of the knife a cold, hard promise against his hip. Malak Ren had taken his home. The Concord had taken his name. He was going to the Imperial Spire to take it all back. Jareth Prime was the jewel of the Dominion, a world engineered to perfection. Its continents were sculpted. Its oceans were a curated, shimmering teal. And its atmosphere was perfumed. Floating in the high, violet sky was the Imperial Spire, a single, impossibly tall needle of living, pearlescent architecture that pierced the edge of space. A monument to the Jareth's absolute mastery over biology. It was also, Jace decided, the most ostentatious target in the galaxy. He sat in the cramped jump seat of a stolen Concord diplomatic shuttle, the Ambassador's Folly. The ship was piloted by Captain Jarrow Flint, a man whose face looked like it had been carved from granite and left out in the rain. He was ex-Concord, just as Sarai had promised, and he commanded his small crew of 3 mercenaries with a quiet, lethal efficiency. "Approaching the orbital checkpoint," Jarrow said, his voice a low rumble. "Princess, your codes had better be perfect." "They are my codes, Captain," Sarai said. She was not in her stealth suit, but in the formal, dark robes of a Jareth Highblood, her hair bound, her face a mask of cold nobility. She looked every bit the part. "They will hold." Jace, clad in the same dark gray fatigues as Jarrow's men, felt uncomfortably exposed. His mother's knife was heavy on his hip, a cold weight under his jacket. "And if they do not, then we have." Jarrow glanced at his tactical display. "Approximately 3 minutes before an entire fleet of biocruisers turns us into nutrient paste. So, let us hope she is right." A Jareth voice, synthesized and perfect, filled the cockpit. "Diplomatic Shuttle Delta, 9 Omega. You are entering restricted Imperial airspace. Transmit your clearance immediately." "Transmitting," Sarai said, placing her hand on the console. There was a long, agonizing silence. Jace could feel his accelerated heart pounding his ribs. The hunter instincts, now fully awake, were screaming at him. They hated this. They hated being in a metal box, surrounded by enemies, with no room to move. "Clearance accepted, Air Sarai Keth. We were unaware of your return. Welcome home. Proceed to Docking Bay 7. "Docking Bay 7, Jarrow muttered, his knuckles white on the controls. "That is a service bay. They are not rolling out the red carpet." "They are containing us," Sarai said, her eyes narrowing. "Malak knows I am here. He is letting us in. He wants the core, and he wants Jace. He is hurting us," Jace said, echoing his own thoughts from Epsilon. He wants us on his ground. Good. It saves us the trouble of finding him. Jarrow shot him a look, a mix of disbelief and professional appraisal. You are either the bravest man I have ever met, or the stupidest. The jury is still out. I am just the janitor, Jace said, checking the charge on his kinetic pistol. And this is the biggest mess in the galaxy. The shuttle landed smoothly in the damp, cavernous service bay. The Imperial spire was not metal. The walls were a pulsing, vascular mesh, glowing with a faint, internal light. The floor felt like resonant bone under his boots. The entire structure was alive, and it hummed with a low-frequency vibration that Jace could feel in his teeth. Jarrow, your men secure the ship, Sarai commanded, stepping out onto the deck. You and Jace are with me. We are shadows. No engagement unless I authorize it. Understood, Your Highness, Jarrow said, signaling his men. They moved into a service corridor. The air was warm, humid, and smelled of ozone and chlorophyll. Security was not automated. It was organic. Oculi sentinels, large, wet, multifaceted eyes, swiveled in wall-mounted sockets, tracking their movement. They see us, Jace whispered. They see an Imperial heir and her escorts, Sarai corrected. Not slowing. She walked with an innate, unshakable authority, as if she belonged nowhere else. The eyes followed her, then dismissed her, their passive threat indicators remaining dark. They moved through the veins of the spire, climbing stairwells that felt like the inside of a massive ribcage. In the distance, they could hear it, a faint, liturgical chanting, the sound of thousands of voices rising and falling in unison. The ascension ceremony, Sarai murmured, her face tight with disgust. He is doing it. In the Grand Conclave. He is broadcasting this farce to the entire Dominion. Where is the central control? Jace asked. One level below the Conclave. A synaptic nexus that controls the Spire's systems and the planetary broadcast. They reached a massive, ornate doorway, a living sphincter of muscle and polished chitin that was sealed tight. This is it, Sarai said. She placed her hand on a bioport beside the door. Imperial access. Override. The door rippled, but it did not open. Access. Denied. A new voice echoed through the corridor. It was not a speaker. It was the spire itself, the walls vibrating with the sound, a voice that was smooth, cultured, and dripping with condescending amusement. Malak Ren. Sarai, my dear child, the voice resonated. You should not have returned. Your place was to be a martyr, a tragic loss to inspire the Dominion. Not this. Alarms blared. The oculi sentinels on the walls snapped open, their lenses now a furious, accusing red. And you, the voice continued, focusing on Jace. You brought the asset, impatient but convenient. Heavy, bioform doors began to grow from the walls, sealing the corridor in front of and behind them. Jarrow raised his pulse rifle, looking for a target. He has us, Jarrow growled. No, Sarai said. He is hurting us. One, and only one. Corridor to their left remained open, a dark, arching tunnel. A small, illuminated sign above it read, in Jareth script, Archival Biogarden, Sector Gamma. He is forcing us away from the Nexus, Jace said, his hand dropping to his mother's knife. He wants us somewhere else. The garden, Sarai said, her blood draining from her face. My mother sealed it. It is where they kept the archival projects, the first failures. The things are too dangerous or too horrifying to display. A zoo, Jarrow grunted. And he just locked us inside. He wants to slow us down, Jace said, staring into the darkness. Or he wants to test his new toy. He started walking on beat, so let's not keep him waiting. The biogarden was Epsilon, but worse. Epsilon had been a tomb. This was a showroom, a vast, humid cavern, spread out before them, lit by phosphorescent fungi. In the center, a forest of stasis tanks, each the size of a shuttle, held creatures suspended in glowing fluid, twisted bodies, failures of engineering, biological nightmares that were half-formed, all muscle and teeth, or all nerves and eyes. They were the rough drafts of the Jareth war machine. "By the void," Jarrow breathed, his rifle up. "This is obscene." "This is the heart of the Ascendant philosophy," Sarai whispered, her voice shaking with rage. "Perfection, at any cost." As they moved onto the central walkway, Jace stumbled, his hand flying to his temple. "Jace!" Sarai grabbed his arm. "He is starting," Jace gasped, the pain in his head a familiar, agonizing spike, but it was not just pain. It was a sound, a thrumming, resonant call, echoing from deep below them. It was the bio-network, the superweapon, and it was waking up. "What is it?" Jarrow demanded, covering their rear. "It is the network," Jace panted, leaning against a tank. "The ceremony is a cover. He is trying to access it now. It knows I am here. It is calling to me." He could feel it, an empty space in his mind, a lock that the network was designed to fit, a terrifying, seductive pull that promised power, promised wholeness. He fought it, his knuckles white. He was terrified, not of the monsters in the tanks, but of the one in his own blood. If he let that call in, if he connected, would he still be Jace Arden, or would he just be Epsilon 734? The puppet key. "He is toying with you," Sarai said, her voice steadying him. "He wants you afraid." "Then he is succeeding," Jace said. Sarai," Malak's voice filled the cavern. "You always appreciated our history, and Jace Arden, you were a success. But one must always appreciate the rough drafts. The first attempt." In the center of the garden, the largest stasis tank, dark and opaque, began to shudder. A loud crack echoed through the humid air. The glass splintered, and the thick, amniotic fluid gushed out. Something massive and fast uncoiled from the wreckage. It was a nightmare. It was a twisted, raw-boned mockery of a hunter. Where Jace was a subtle, cellular integration, this thing was all brute force. It was 12 feet tall, a mismatched horror of chitinous plates, exposed muscle, and 4 scythe-like arms. It had no eyes, only a sloped, armored head that tasted the air. It was a failure, a mindless, instinct-driven engine of pure destruction. A failed hunter prototype. "Contacts," Jarrow yelled, opening fire. His 2 remaining mercenaries, disciplined and professional, did the same. Pulse rounds stitched across the creature's hide, sizzling. But they did not penetrate. The creature shrieked, a sound that cracked the nearby glass tanks. It moved, with an impossible, jerky speed. It lunged, not at Jarrow, but at one of his men. The man screamed, a wet, choked sound, as 2 scythe arms punched straight through his chest plate. "Fall back grenades!" Jarrow roared, firing a micro-grenade from his underslung launcher. The grenade exploded against the creature's shoulder, staggering it, but it did not stop. It bled thick, steaming acid where it was hit. It was Jace's worst fears given form. Raw power, no control. "That is my fight," Jace said, his voice deadly calm. The thrumming in his head, the call of the network, was drowned out by the immediate, biological threat. "Get Sarai clear. Find another exit." "Arden, that is suicide," Jarrow yelled, reloading. "It is what I was built for." Jace drew his mother's knife, He did not run. He walked toward the creature. The failed hunter sensed him. It dropped the mercenary's body and swiveled, its head tilting. It could smell him. It smelled like a rival, a successor. It charged. Jace moved. He was fast, faster than any human. But he was holding back. He was afraid to let go, afraid to become that. He dodged, weaving under a scythe arm that sheared a stasis tank in half. The creature was all instinct. It spat a glob of enzyme acid. Jace dove, rolling, the acid melting the floor where he had been. He came up, his pistol firing, sinking 3 kinetic slugs into its chest. The creature barely flinched. It was too strong, too raw. It saw Jace dodge toward Sarai. It saw her, bleeding from a piece of shrapnel, her pulse pistol firing. It registered her as the other. A threat to be neutralized. It changed targets, its massive form blurring as it lunged for her. "Princess!" Jarrow screamed, his rifle firing uselessly. Jace saw it. He saw the scythe arm raised. He saw Sarai's eyes widen, her pistol too late. He saw her brace for the impact. The fear of what he was vanished, eclipsed by the burning, blinding terror of what he was about to lose. The universe broke. The thrumming in his head did not just call. He answered. The seals he had instinctively maintained. The mental walls he had built over 10 years of survival, they did not just break. They atomized. Time did not slow down. It stopped. He saw the scythe arm, centimeters from Sarai's chest. He saw the micro-contractions in the creature's alien muscle fibers. He saw the acidic saliva dripping from its maw, frozen in midair. He felt the chemical makeup of the enzyme it was preparing to spit. He tasted it, and his own biology. The apex of Epsilon's engineering responded. A near-invisible shear of neutralizing molecules secreted from his pores. He moved. He was not fast. He was instant. The creature's arm lashed out. Jace was already there, his hand grabbing the chitinous limb. The arm, strong enough to tear through a bulkhead, stopped dead. The creature shrieked, confused. It spat its enzyme acid directly into Jace's face. The acid hit his skin and steamed, vaporizing on contact. Rendered utterly harmless by his body's instant, adaptive defense, HFY. Humans. Fortified. Horrifying. He heard its twin hearts. Thump, 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 thump. One in the chest, one in the abdomen. He drew his mother's knife. The creature, driven by pure, mindless rage, brought all 4 arms down to crush him. It was not a fight. It was a dissection. Jace slipped inside its guard. His movement was a blur, a dance of pure, lethal instinct guided by a human mind. He spun, the black bioknife flashing. 1. He severed the primary tendons in its left arms. 2. He ducked under a wild swing, plunging the knife hilt deep into the abdominal heart. 3. He vaulted onto the creature's back as it thrashed, grabbed its armored head, and drove the point of the knife straight down into its primary neural cluster. The creature went rigid. A single, shuddering sigh escaped it. It collapsed, dead, its limbs twitching. Silence. Jace stood on the creature's chassis, his chest heaving. The power was roaring through him, a tidal wave of adrenaline, energy, and pure, unfiltered clarity. He could see everything. The heat signatures of Jarrow and his remaining 2 men. The bioelectric pulse of Sarai's beating heart. The hum of the spire. The distant, screaming call of the network. It felt good. It felt right. He turned, the bloody knife held low. Jarrow and his men had their rifles up. They were not aimed at the dead creature. They were aimed, with trembling hands, at him. "Son," Jarrow said, his voice tight. "Stand down. It is over." Jace looked at them. They were threats. They were armed. They were between him and the objective. The Hunter Protocol. The cold, clean logic of the weapon surfaced. Secure the area. Neutralize hostiles. He took a step toward Jarrow, raising the knife. A low growl built in his chest. "Jace!" "Sarai!" She was standing, her hand pressed to her bleeding side, right between him and Jarrow. She was pale, terrified, but she was not moving. He stopped. The red haze of the protocol was still there, screaming at him to clear the threat. "My tactical advice, Hunter," Sarai panted, her voice shaking but firm, "is killing our allies a very bad idea." He stared at her, the man, and the weapon warring behind his eyes. She held his gaze, and her expression softened. Just a fraction. "Besides," she whispered, You promised we would not get eaten. That was the plan. Remember, the memory, the cargo bay, the foolish bravado, the human connection. It shattered the protocol. The red haze vanished, leaving him shaking. The sudden backlash of the power making him dizzy. He looked at the knife in his hand, slick with black blood. He looked at Jarrow's terrified men. He dropped the knife. It clattered on the deck. He gasped. "I am sorry." Jarrow let out a breath he had been holding for 10 seconds and slowly lowered his rifle. "We are leaving. Now. Before another one of those things shows up." "He is right," Sarai said, grabbing Jace's arm, her touch grounding him. "To the conclave. Now." They burst through the final doorway into the Grand Conclave. It was a cavernous amphitheater, filled with thousands of Jareth Highbloods. They were all standing, their arms raised, chanting. On a central, floating dais, Malak Ren stood, his eyes closed, his hands glowing with a green, biotic energy. He was plugged into a massive console, and Jace could feel it. He was trying to force his way into the network, using the ceremony as a massive psychic amplifier. "He is using the wrong key," Jace yelled over the din. "He is just knocking. But he is ripping the network. He is going to cause a catastrophic backlash." "We have to stop him," Sarai shouted. Jace ignored her. He saw the broadcast controls at the side of the dais. He ran. "Malak!" Sarai screamed, her voice, amplified by her royal authority, cutting through the chanting. Malak's eyes snapped open. He saw her. He saw Jace. He smiled. Sarai, you are too late. The Ascension is what are you doing?" Jace slammed the Epsilon data core into the broadcast console. "Override authorization play file Epsilon Purge Omega. Now, stop him!" Malak roared. But it was too late. The console accepted the core. On every screen in the conclave, on every monitor in the spire, on every broadcast receiver across the planet, the holy image of Malak's ascension vanished. It was replaced by the dark, grainy, terrifying footage from Epsilon. The failures, the twisted bodies cowering in the nursery wing, the vats, the skeletons, the audio, cold and clear, of the human soldier. The Concord Oversight Committee is panicked. They are purging the evidence. The audio of Jace's mother screaming. Not Jace. He is the only viable unit. The chanting stopped. A collective, horrified gasp sucked the air from the room. The Imperial Council, the High Bloods, the priests were all staring, aghast, at the truth, at the butchery. "He lied," one of the council members whispered. "This is not ascension, this is an abomination." Malak's face was a mask of pure reptilian fury. His plan, his holy war, was ruined. He recovered in an instant. "You see," he roared, his voice booming through the hall. "You see the horror, the chaos they unleashed, the weakness of the old Empress, her diplomacy." He raised a finger, and he pointed, not at Sarai, at Jace. "You see a victim. I see the weapon. This is the proof." You are looking at Hunter Unit Epsilon 734. The hall went utterly silent. All eyes, thousands of them, locked onto Jace. "This is the ultimate bioweapon, Mawar," Malak shouted, his voice ringing with triumph. "A hybrid of human filth and Jareth perfection, designed to command the very network I seek to control, a weapon they sanctioned." He delivered the final, killing blow. A project approved and funded by the Human-Conquered Special Projects Division. They made him destroy us, and when they failed, they butchered his colony to hide their shame. Jace froze. He was no longer the whistleblower. He was the bomb. He was the symbol of humanity's ultimate treachery. He was the enemy. "Jace, no," Sarai yelled. Malak, in his moment of victory, slammed his hands back on his console, forcing the activation. The network will obey. It will obey its master. A jolt of pure, agonizing power slammed into Jace. He screamed. The network, it was reaching for him, 1,000 hooks sinking into his mind. Hunter Unit recognized, but it was wrong. Fractured. Malak's forced intrusion was interfering. It was not a clean connection. It was a war. Malak saw it failing. He roared in frustration. "Guards, seize the asset. Seize the traitor heir." A shimmering green-black tear in reality opened behind Malak's dais. A bioportal. "It is not over, Key." Malak spat at Jace, his eyes burning with hatred. "You cannot fight your own nature. You will come to me. You will come home." He stepped backward into the portal. It snapped shut, vanishing. "We are compromised," Jaro yelled, firing his pulse rifle at the first wave of Imperial guards, flooding the hall. "We have to move now." The guards were not running for the empty dais. They were running for them. Jace grabbed Sarai, pulling her toward the service exit. His mind was reeling, but one word stuck. One word held the key. "He said home," Jace snarled, pulling her through the doorway as Jaro's men laid down cover fire. "What?" Sarai gasped, clutching her side. "What does that mean?" "He did not just mean the spire," Jace said, his eyes burning with a new, terrifying certainty. "He is going back to the source. Back to the only place that can give him a clean connection to the network. And to me." He dragged her into the corridor. "He is going back to Epsilon." The Grand Conclave was a pandemonium of panic. Jareth highbloods, beings who had not moved faster than a regal walk in their entire lives, were scrambling over one another, shoving to get clear of the dais, trampling their own in their haste to escape the revelation. "Guards, seize them!" A member of the Imperial Council bellowed, his voice cracking with hysteria. "Seize the human weapon!" Jaro Flint and his 2 remaining mercenaries formed a tight triangle, their pulse rifles spitting coherent light into the first wave of Imperial phalanx guards. The guards, clad in their obsidian bioarmor, were disciplined, but they were also confused. Their target a mixture of their fugitive, heir apparent, and a creature Malak had just declared the single greatest threat to their existence. "Jace, the exit," Sarai shouted, grabbing his arm. She was still bleeding, a dark stain spreading across her robes, but her eyes were clear, focused, and incandescent with fury. "That way," Jaro pointed to the service tunnel they had entered. "It is our only way back to the bay." "We are not going to the bay," Jace snarled, yanking his arm free. He did not run from the fight. He ran through it, shouldering a guard so hard the Jareth's armor cracked. He was not just strong, he was dense. His entire cellular structure had strengthened. "Arden, what in the hell are you doing?" Jaro roared, providing cover fire. Jace ignored him. He sprinted back to the dais, back to the console, where Malak had opened his escape portal. The bioportal was gone, but the console was still thrumming, slick with residual energy. Sarai followed him, her gun. Jace, he is gone. We have to leave. The entire spire is on alert. He is gone, but the link is still warm, Jace said. He put his bare-heeled hands on the console. The pain, the call, the agonizing pull of the network was all focused here. A screaming vortex. His connection to Malak was still active, a psychic thread stretching across the stars. I can feel him. Get away from the asset. A phalanx commander, larger than the others, his armor etched with gold, lunged at Jace, a plasma blade igniting on his wrist. Before Jace could even turn, Sarai shot him. A single, precise pulse bolt punched through the guard's neck seal. He collapsed, without a sound. Jace stared at her. They will call me a traitor for that, she said, her voice a cold whisper, her pistol smoking. The price of doing business. At that moment, chaos crystallized. The council, the guards, the entire Dominion, had turned against them. Sarai stepped onto the dais, facing the panicked, furious assembly. She raised her free hand, and a wave of pure, kinetic force, her gravity implant slammed into the closest guards, sending them flying. Listen, she boomed, her voice amplified by the Conclave's broadcast system, overriding the alarms. You saw the truth, Malak Ren. Your beloved regent is a butcher. He is the one who consorted with human extremists, the one who murdered your empress, the one who created this abomination. She pointed at the frozen image of the Epsilon failures on the screen. He lied to you, too. And now, he has fled to the source of his power, to the heart of his superweapon. To finish what he started, I am Sarai Keth, your rightful empress, and I will not allow this. She turned to Jace, her expression unreadable, her voice carrying to every corner of the room. I will hunt the traitor. I will take this weapon. She gestured to Jace, her voice dripping with calculated disdain. And I will use it to cleanse his stain. This is my vow. It was a masterstroke of political theater. In one breath, she had declared Malak a fugitive, reclaimed her own authority, and reframed Jace from human threat to her tool. She had given the bewildered council a new narrative, a new enemy, and a new leader. Jace, Jaro, now, she whispered, her imperial mask falling for a split second. They fled, Jaro's men covering their retreat. Hall guards paused, their orders confused, their loyalty fractured. Sarai's gamble had bought them the precious minutes they needed. They made it back to the ambassador's folly in a full sprint. Get us out of here, Captain, Sarai ordered, collapsing into the co-pilot's chair, her hand pressed to her side. With pleasure, Your Highness, Jaro said, his fingers flying. The diplomatic codes that had gotten them in were useless now. He slammed the throttle, blasting the ship out of the service bay on pure, brute force. They are locking us, the mercenary in the back, a heavy weapons specialist named Kale, yelled. Biocruisers, 2 of them, intercept course. They will not fire, Sarai panted, looking at Jace. Not while you are on board. You are the key. They will try to disable us. Just like last time, Jace said, his mind racing. The biodampener. But this time, they know my trick. Then we need a new one, Jaro said, his knuckles white. Jace, Sarai said, her voice tight. Your abilities. That call you feel. Can you touch them? The ships. Jace closed his eyes. He reached out with that new, terrifying sense. He felt the Jareth cruisers, not as metal, but as life. They were living ships, their systems run by massive, vat-grown nerve clusters, their weapons organic. He felt the pilot's consciousness, their bio-implants connecting them to their vessels. And he pushed, It was not a command. It was a suggestion, a virus of pure, concentrated doubt. He did not tell them to stop. He just amplified their own sudden fear, the one Sarai's speech had planted. Is the Regent a traitor? Are we firing on our Empress? Is that the weapon on Jaro's monitor? The two cruisers suddenly, inexplicably faltered. Their targeting locks wavered. One ship's biopulse cannons, which had been glowing with ready energy, dimmed. They are confused, Jaro breathed, his respect for Jace growing. They are arguing with each other. It is all the time I need. He slammed the jump drive, and the Imperial spire vanished behind them. The journey back to the dead planet, back to the ruins of Epsilon, was a long, cold silence. Kale and the other merc, Ren, were patching Sarai's side. The plasma bolt had grazed her, a glancing, cauterized wound that was still bleeding. Jace sat in the pilot's chair, staring at the debris field that was once his home, now his destination. You knew, he said finally, his voice flat, not looking at her. Jace, she began. You knew, he repeated, his voice harder. You knew it was a joint project. You knew Concord was involved. You brought me to that bar. You said you'd never survive a night, knowing. You used me. I suspected, Sarai admitted, her voice tight with pain, both physical and otherwise. My mother kept secrets. She had a private file on Epsilon. It was sealed, but the logs showed communications with Concord Special Projects. I did not know what it was. I did not know about you. I swear it. You did not know, or you did not want to know. Jace stood, turning to face her. The rage was back, cold and sharp. You needed a tool, a disposable asset to get your data core. You did not care what it cost, as long as you got your throne back. That is not true, she snapped, her imperial pride flaring. I am trying to save my empire from a genocidal fanatic. Yes, I needed the core. And yes, I suspected you were more than human. But I did not know. Jace, I did not know they had done that to you, or to your people. So what now? He snarled. We get to Epsilon. I kill Malak. I blew up the network. And would I get a pat on the head? Maybe a lordship in your new, enlightened empire. What I want, she said, her voice dropping, is to stop a war that will kill billions. A war in Malak is about to start. My duty is to the Dominion. That must come first, even before your revenge. Your duty, Jace laughed, a bitter, ugly sound. My revenge is the only thing that matters. He burned my world. Your people and my people did it together. I am going to Epsilon to finish this. And if one single Jareth life gets in my way, I will not hesitate. I will burn your entire empire. Sarai. I will be the weapon they built me to be. The cockpit was silent. Jaro and his men looked at the floor, staying out of a conflict that was far beyond their pay grade. Sarai met Jace's burning gaze. She did not flinch. Then, you will have to burn me, Hunter. Because I will not let you. The standoff was broken by Jaro's voice. We are here. They dropped out of warp. The wreckage of Epsilon was just as they had left it. A silent, shattered graveyard. Or it had been. It was no longer silent. Massive. Fractured pieces of the station were moving. They were pulling themselves back together. Thick, organic-looking cables, like massive, pulsing veins, were stretching across the void, reconnecting the broken parts. The station's central core, where the mother node had been, was glowing with a furious, green light, a diseased star at the center of a web. The entire wreck was alive. Malak was not just in the station. He was at the station. He has plugged into the network, Jace whispered, his new senses reeling. The call, was no longer a whisper. It was a deafening, seductive roar. He is using the station's core as a focus. He is rebuilding it, regrowing it. This is insane, Ren muttered from the back. We cannot fight that. That is a bioship the size of a city. We do not fight the city, Jace said, his mind clearing, the rage settling into a sharp, tactical point. We cut out the heart. He pointed to the glowing green core. That is where he is. That is where I am going. Jace, we cannot even get close, Jarrow said. The second we move in, he will tear us apart with whatever defenses he has grown. You are not getting close, Jace said. You are going to hold this position. It is the only clear jump point out of the system. Malak knows we are here. He is letting us get this close. He wants me. I am going in alone. Like hell you are, Sarai said, pushing herself up from the chair. I am going with... No. Jace's voice was absolute. He will ignore you. He will let you pass. He wants me. You. He looked at her, his expression softening for a bare instant. Your job is to hold the exit. Jarrow cannot do it alone if Malak sends his new pets out to play. You trust me to do this, or you do not. But this is the only way. Sarai stared at him. She saw the man who had ripped steel doors. She saw the man who had saved the failures. She saw the weapon, and she saw the human. I trust the human, she said quietly. I do not trust the hunter. Make sure the right one comes back. She handed him a small Jareth comm bead. So I know who I am talking to. So you can hear me. Jace nodded, putting the bead in his ear. Jarrow, keep her alive. That I can do, the captain grunted. Jace went to the airlock, his mother's knife in his hand. He did not mind a helmet or a suit. He did not need them. He opened the outer door. The void was cold, silent. He stood on the edge, looking at the monstrous, living architecture of his birthplace. Welcome home, Hunter. Malak's voice, no longer through a speaker, but inside his head, resonating from the station itself. I have been waiting for you, Jace leaped. He did not drift. He flew. Using his enhanced physiology, he pushed off the shuttle, a single, powerful leap that carried him hundreds of meters across the black. He landed on one of the pulsing, organic cables, his boots sinking into the warm, fleshy tissue. The station reacted, the oculi sentinels, regrown, snapped open, their red eyes locking onto him. Wall stalks burst from the hull. You see, Malak's voice was triumphant, laughing in his mind. It fears you. It serves me. But it knows you. It knows its true master. Jace ran. He ran along the spine of the ruined station, the hunter instincts in perfect sync with his human will. He was not a man running through a machine. He was a virus moving through a body. He dodged. He weaved. He felt the sentinels fire before they did, their enzyme darts missing him by inches. He was moving toward the glowing core, the new heart of the mother node. You cannot fight your own nature, Jace, Malak taunted, his voice a chorus of 1,000. You were built for this. You were born to command. Why serve her, a failed princess of a dying empire? She is better than you. Jace grunted, ripping a sentry stock from its socket and using it as a shield against another. And the humans, Malak sneered. Your beloved Concord, they threw you away. They murdered your mother. A new wave of memory, sharper and more painful than the last, slammed into Jace. Malak was forcing it on him, using the station as an amplifier. He saw his mother, Dr. Eris, and a Jareth woman who looked like an older, sterner Sarai, Sarai's mother. the Empress. They were standing together in the Epsilon lab. "The project is a success, Your Majesty," his mother said, her voice proud. "He is not a weapon. He is a bridge, a guardian. He has the human capacity for adaptation, and the Jareth mastery of biology. He will be the one who can intervene. A moral failsafe, when politicians like yours," she nodded at the Empress, "or mine lose their way." "It is a noble goal, Doctor," the Empress replied, "but one that frightens small minds. The conquered hardliners are already moving against you. They see a protector as a threat to their authority." "And your ascendants," his mother countered. "They see a hybrid as an abomination." "Then we must protect him," the Empress said. "The mother node will hold his true protocols, his purpose, until he is ready." The memory shattered, replaced by Malak's. "The Concord demands the project's termination," the cold human voice said to a younger Malak. "We will provide the fleet for the orbital sanitization. Your role, Regent, is to ensure the Epsilon facility itself is cleaned. Blame it on a containment failure, a tragic accident." Malak smiled. "A pleasure. A chance to test our new enzyme strains, and to remove a political rival." "You were a tool," Jace Malak's voice roared in his mind. "A tool for everyone, for your mother's idealism, for the Empress's paranoia, for Concord's treachery, and for my ambition. But only I am honest enough to tell you what you are." Jace burst into the central core. It was the same chamber, but regrown. The tank was intact, and floating in the green fluid was not just the mother node's brain, but Malak himself. He was fused with it. His body was pale. His eyes were glowing green. And 1,000 neural conduits were plugged into his spine, merging his consciousness with the station's. "I am what you could be." "Hunter," Malak whispered, his voice coming from the man and the walls simultaneously. "I am Ascension. I am in control." "You are a cancer," Jace snarled, raising his knife. "And you are the cure." Malak smiled. "You are here. You are the key. Your hatred, your rage is the final catalyst. You hate Concord. You hate the Dominion. Let it go. Jace, join me. Accept your birthright. Your DNA is the master key. Together, we can take the network. We can cleanse the galaxy. We can burn the Conquered for what they did to your mother. And we can burn the Jareth for their weakness. We can have the vengeance you deserve." The pull was overwhelming. The power was intoxicating. Jace felt his rage, his life's defining trauma, swell within him. Malak was right. They all deserved to burn. His mother's ideals had gotten her killed. The Conquered had betrayed him. The Jareth had butchered him. He could end it, all of it. He could finally be in control. He took a step toward the tank. His hand, holding the knife, lowering. The network sang to him, a promise of ultimate power. He could feel every ascendant ship, every hidden weapon, every node across the galaxy, waiting for him. Jace, a whisper, not in his head, in his ear. It was Sarai's voice, small, distorted by static, coming from the comm bead. "Jace, can you hear me?" "I am here," he whispered, his voice thick. "They are coming. 3 ships. Ascendant. They are powering weapons. Jaro is engaging. But we cannot." He saw it in his mind. He saw the ambassador's folly, small and fragile. He saw Jaro, a good man, fighting a battle he could not win. He saw Sarai, wounded, defiant, about to be vaporized. Malak is just a man. Jace, his mother's voice, from memory, but a guardian. A guardian protects. You would protect them. Malak's voice was a hiss of disbelief. The Jareth princess, the Concord mercenary, after everything. "They did not kill my mother," Jace said, his voice quiet, his eyes clearing. The red haze of vengeance was receding, replaced by the cold, bright light of human choice. "They stand for the empires that did," Malak screamed. "You are a fool, an emotional, sentimental, human fool." "No," Jace said, the power of the network still thrumming in him. "I am just stubborn." He looked at Malak, floating in his tank. A man who had become a machine, a slave to his own ideology. "You are right about one thing, Malak," Jace said. "The network does need its master." He did not reject the power. He did not fight it. He seized it. He opened his mind, not to Malak's hate, but to the network's core. He was Epsilon 734. He was the key, and the lock obeyed. The connection snapped into place, a jolt of pure, white-hot energy that was not pain, but control. Malak screamed. It was a thin, terrified sound. "No. It is mine. I am the Ascendant." "You are just a parasite," Jace said, his voice calm, his eyes glowing with the same green light as the core. "And I am the cure." He did not attack Malak's body. He attacked his mind. He was inside the network, a vast, digital, biological galaxy. He saw Malak's consciousness, a screaming, dark fire. And Jace, the hunter, the guardian, simply snuffed it out. He used Malak's own link, his own fusion with the station, as a conduit. He pushed. He did not just disconnect Malak. He deleted him, in the tank. Malak's eyes went wide. The green light vanished, replaced by a dull, human terror. He opened his mouth, and then he was gone. His body went limp, his consciousness erased from the network, his vital signs flatlining. A dead man, floating in a dead machine's heart. The Epsilon station groaned. The core's green light flickered, died, and then it stabilized. It pulsed. Once. A steady, calm, white light. Jace stood in the center of the chamber, his chest heaving. He could feel it all. The station, the network. The 3 Ascendant ships. Now frozen. Their systems locked. Their crews paralyzed, awaiting his command. He could feel the regret and the terrified, hopeful heartbeats inside. He opened the comm. "Sarai." "Jace." Her voice was a terrified whisper. "Jace, is that you? It is me," he said. He felt the power, the godlike control, and it terrified him. But it did not own him. "The network is quiet. Malak is gone. I am in control." There was a long silence. "Hunter," she said, finally, her voice shaking. "What do we do now?" Jace looked at his hands. He could crush fleets. He could end the war. He could become the tyrant Malak had always wanted to be. He was the strongest being in the galaxy. "Now," Jace said, his voice heavy with a weight no human was ever meant to bear. "Now we go home. And we talk." The return to the ambassador's folly was a silent, heavy drift through the void. Jace moved from the living station back to the shuttle. The 3 paralyzed Ascendant destroyers, hanging inert in the black. Silent testaments to his new, terrifying authority. He had not just defeated Malak. He had consumed him. He had taken the network. And now, the entire galaxy-spanning web of dormant bioweapons, a nervous system of unimaginable power, was fused to his own consciousness. He could feel it, a low, constant, agonizing hum at the base of his skull. It was not a voice. It was a weight, 1,000 silent, sleeping leviathans, all waiting for a single command from him. With a thought, he had silenced the Ascendant ships. With a whisper, he could silence the world. As he cycled through the airlock, Jarro Flint and his 2 mercenaries, Kale and Wren, did not look at him. They looked past him, their eyes fixed on the bulkhead, their hands tense on their weapons. They were terrified. He was no longer Jace Arden, the smart-mouthed scavenger. He was an asset. The key. The human bomb that had just decisively won. Only Sarai met his gaze. She was pale, her wounded side clutched tight, but her amethyst eyes were not fearful. They were analytical, searching, and deeply, profoundly troubled. The power dynamic had been inverted so completely it had shattered. She was an empress with no empire, and he was a janitor who held the galaxy in his hand. "Jace," she said, her voice quiet. "I know," he replied, his voice rough. He sank into the co-pilot's chair, the adrenaline of the fight draining away, leaving an acidic, hollow exhaustion. He closed his eyes, and with a grunt of immense mental effort, he pushed the network away. He built walls. He pictured the entire web, every node, every dormant weapon, and he put it to sleep. He commanded it to be silent. The hum in his head dropped to a dull, manageable ache, like a migraine he would have for the rest of his life. "It is done," he panted, opening his eyes. "It is frozen, dormant. Only I can wake it." "And the ships?" Jaro asked, his voice strained. "Paralyzed. Their biosystems are locked in a neural loop. They are fine. They just cannot move, or shoot, nor think." Jaro stared at him for a long, heavy second. "We are going home. Then, back to Jareth Prime." "Home," Jace muttered, looking at his hands. They had torn steel. They had ended a life with a thought. "Yeah, let's go home." The return to the Imperial Spire was nothing like their escape. They were not fugitives. They were not conquerors. They were a problem that had returned. The Imperial Council, the same high-bloods who had panicked and fled, were reconvened in the Grand Conclave. The hall was scrubbed, but the energy was one of pure, distilled fear. When Sarai entered, leaning on Jaro for support, a wave of murmurs rippled through the assembly. But when Jace followed, stepping out of the shadows to stand at the foot of the dais, the hall went utterly, deathly silent. "Malak Ren is dead," Sarai announced, her voice ringing with a strength she did not feel. "His consciousness was erased from the network he sought to control. The Ascendant Fleet," she gestured to a tactical display, "is frozen, paralyzed. The Civil War was over before it began." A sigh of relief swept the room, followed immediately by a new, sharper tension. "And it?" a withered old counselor asked, gesturing at Jace with a trembling hand. "The hunter, the key." "The key is with me," Sarai said, her voice like ice. "The network is dormant. It is neutralized. And she pulled herself to her full height, "am your Empress heir, by my authority. I am assuming the regency until my coronation. We will rebuild." The council fractured. Half of them surged to their feet, shouting her name, praising her as the hero who had stopped the purge. The other half, the more conservative, fearful ones, stared at Jace. "She is a hero, but she is a hero who holds a blasphemy on a leash." Another counselor shouted, "She did not destroy the weapon. She controls it. How is this different for Malak? She has simply replaced one tyrant with another human one." "The human weapon will be dealt with," Sarai stated, her voice promising nothing. "For now, he is my ward, under my protection, and under my watch." Jace said nothing. He just stood there, the living embodiment of their deepest fears, and in doing so, he cemented Sarai's power more surely than any army could have. They were terrified of him, and she was the only one he listened to. While Jareth Prime began the process of rebuilding its fractured government, the news rippled across the galaxy at light speed. The human Concord which had been monitoring the Jareth civil disturbance with predatory interest, went into a state of collective panic. The emergency broadcast from the conclave, the Epsilon footage, the name Malak Ren, and the two names that mattered most: Concord Special Projects Division and Hunter Unit Epsilon 734. He was alive. Their asset. Their failure. Their ghost was alive. And he had just decapitated the Jareth Empire and taken control of a superweapon they themselves had tried to bury over a decade ago. In a secure, black-walled room on Concord Citadel, the Oversight Committee for Section Omega met. "He is a rogue asset," a grim-faced admiral stated, his knuckles white. "He is the single greatest threat to Concord security in history. He must be retrieved." "Retrieve him?" A woman in a politician's gray suit scoffed. "Admiral, did you watch the feed? He is not an asset. He is a god. He froze a fleet." "How exactly? Do you plan to retrieve him?" "Send a team. He will blink and turn them into protein slush." "He is still human," the admiral insisted. "He is not," the politician countered. "He is something new, and he has every reason to hate us. This division signed the order that murdered his entire colony. We tried to kill him. We created him, and then we betrayed him. He is not a rogue asset. He is a walking, talking judge." "Then what is the recommendation?" "We cannot retrieve him. But we cannot let the Jareth keep him. We must negotiate. We sent an envoy. We find out what he wants. And we remind him," her voice grew cold, "that he is, biologically, still human, and that his loyalty should be to us." Jace was a prisoner in a palace. He had been given opulent quarters in the spire, a room with a balcony that overlooked the entirety of the sculpted, perfect capital. He hated it. The air was too clean, the sounds too quiet. He missed the smell of rust and ozone from rimfall. He had become the thing everyone whispered. The Jareth servants who brought him food would not meet his eyes. The phalanx guards posted outside his door for his protection. Sarai had claimed, or for theirs visibly flinched when he walked past. His life, which had been defined by the singular, burning purpose of revenge, was now aimless. Malak was gone. The rage that had fueled him for 10 years had nowhere to go. And the real culprits, the shadowy figures in the Concord, were untouchable. He was adrift, and he was terrified of the power that hummed in his skull, the power that tempted him, in his darkest moments, to just use it, to reach out, find the Concord admiral who gave the order, and just stop his heart. He spent his days in the Spire's massive, empty training rooms, trying to burn off the energy. He practiced with his mother's knife, the black blade a familiar weight. He was faster now, stronger. He had to relearn his own limits, which seemed to vanish every time he pushed. Sarai found him there, 3 days after their return. She too was restless. She had traded her imperial robes for a simple, black Jareth training uniform. Her side was healing, the bioregenerators leaving only a faint, silver scar. "You look ridiculous," Jace said, not pausing as he slashed a training dummy in two. "And you look like a brooding thundercloud," she retorted, stretching. "Which, I am learning, is the default human emotional state. Move." She attacked. It was not a spar. It was a fight. She was fast, using her gravity implants to alter her weight, dropping from the ceiling, sliding under his guard. But Jace was faster. His hunter senses anticipated her moves. He caught her wrist, spun her, and put his knife against her throat. They were both breathing hard. "You are holding back," she panted, her throat against his blade. "I am trying not to break my new toy," he shot back, the old banter a welcome, familiar echo. "You are afraid," she said. not moving. You are terrified of it. I can see it. You move like you are walking on glass, afraid you will shatter the floor. You cannot live like that, Hunter. Do not call me that, he snarled, releasing her and stepping back. I am not a hunter. Are you not? Then what are you, Jace Arden? Scavenger, that man died in Epsilon. The man who holds the network needs a name. What is it? I do not know, Jace admitted, his voice hollow. He sank onto a bench. My entire life was about one thing, Sarai. Hating your people, hating what they did to me. And now, Malik is dead. And I found out my folks. Concord pulled the trigger. Who do I hate now, Warion? Sarai sat beside him, a respectable distance between them. I know the feeling. You are an empress. I am a figurehead, she said, her voice bitter. Half my council thinks I am a hero. The other half thinks I am a heretic, consorting with a human monster to secure my throne. My people are grateful, but they are terrified. Of you. I am trapped. Just like you. They were quiet for a moment. Two prisoners on opposite sides of the same gilded cage. I have a proposal, Sarai said finally. I am not interested in becoming your official royal executioner. Jace said. This is not execution. It is sanitation. Malik is dead, but the Ascendants are not. They are still embedded in my council. And the Concord hardliners who signed your mother's death warrant. They are still sitting in their black-walled rooms, deciding how to retrieve you. Your point, my point, she said, her amethyst eyes locking on his, is that the disease is not gone, and we only killed the symptom. You have the scalpel. We could end this. Not a war, not a purge, a surgical strikes. You mean assassination, Jace said, his voice cold. I mean a demonstration, she countered, her voice heating. We identify the 50, perhaps 100 individuals in both our empires who perpetuate this. Those who see people as assets, those who signed the Epsilon Order, and you just turn them off, like you did to Malik. A silent, clean removal. We show the galaxy, publicly, the consequence of playing God. Jace stared at her, horrified. That's Sarai, that is monstrous. Is it, she argued, standing up, is it more monstrous than letting them live? Letting them start another war? Letting them build another Epsilon? We have the power to stop it. Jace, permanently. Think of the billions of lives we would save. I will not, Jace said, his voice flat and final. I am not a murderer. I am not him. I am not Malik. Sarai looked at him, her face a mixture of frustration and a strange, grudging respect. No, you are not, she whispered. You are just human, stubborn, sentimental, and infuriatingly, tragically moral. It is your greatest strength, and it is going to get us all killed. She turned and left the training room. 2 days later, the Concord envoy arrived. Jace and Sarai received her in a small, secure audience chamber. Jace had insisted on it. No guards, no council, just them. The envoy was not the admiral Jace had expected. She was an older human woman, with kind eyes, gray hair, and a face etched with a profound, weary sadness. She was introduced as Ambassador Rilia Varys. Jaws Arden, she said, her voice soft. She did not bow to Sarai. I knew your mother, Alara Arden. I was her attaché before she was assigned to the Epsilon Project. Jace went rigid. Then you were one of them. I was, Rilia said, not flinching. I was one of the ones who tried to stop the purge, and I have lived with the failure of that attempt for 17 years. She looked at Sarai. And I knew your mother, Empress Thalia Keth. I met her many times. She placed a small, encrypted data slate on the table. Section Omega believes they destroyed all records, Relia said. They did not. The archives are deep. This is the original Project Aegis file. The one before Malik and the Conquered Hardliners twisted it into Project Hunter. Jace looked at Sarai. Aegis. A shield. It was not a weapons program, Relia said, her voice trembling with emotion. It was a defense program. A peace initiative. Your mother's. Jace Sarai. They were allies. They were co-conspirators. They saw the hardliners in both their governments, the Ascendants and Section Omega, pushing for total war. They saw the galaxy sliding toward genocide. So they built a failsafe, a moral guardian. She looked at Jace, her eyes filling with tears. Not a weapon, Jace. A guardian. A hybrid, belonging to neither side, but understanding both. Someone with the humanity to know when to stop a war, and the Jareth power to do it. Your mother volunteered you, Jace. It was her greatest hope, and her greatest sin. The room was silent. Jace felt his entire reality tilt. The foundation of his life betrayal, revenge, was a lie. He was not a victim. He was a volunteer. That night, Jace stood on the balcony, the cold, clean air of Jareth Prime feeling thin in his lungs. He was processing, a guardian, a moral failsafe. What a terrible, beautiful, impossible burden. He heard her approach, Sarai. She was not in robes or a training uniform, just a simple dark dress. She looked small. You knew, Jace said. It was not an accusation. It was a statement. No, she whispered, standing beside him, not looking at him. I swear to you, Jace, I never knew my mother was allied with yours. I never knew the purpose. But you knew something, she sighed. My mother was afraid. The last time I saw her, before her cellular collapse, she told me she had a contingency. She said, if the Ascendants ever take the throne, find the Epsilon key. It is the only thing that can stop them. I thought she meant a weapon. Jace, a data core. Something I could use to win a war. And when you found me in that bar, when Zeker identified you, when I realized the key was a person, I did not know what to think, but I knew you were what she meant. So, I tested you. Jace looked at her. You'd never survive a night. It was a gamble, she whispered, her voice thick with a guilt he recognized. It was cruel, but I had to know. If you were just a scavenger, you would have died, and my mother's hope would have died with you. But if you were his guardian, you would survive. I pulled you into this, Jace. I used your pain to get my core. I knew you were the only one who could break this cycle. She finally turned to face him, her amethyst eyes luminous in the planet's twilight. I was so afraid you would choose Malik's path, that you would become the monster they all wanted you to be, but I had no right to stop you. He saw it then. Empathy, the shared burden. She was the only other person in the galaxy who understood the crushing weight of an unwanted destiny. Before he could speak, his private comm, the one linked to Jaro, chimed in his ear. Jace, sorry to interrupt whatever it is you are doing. Jaro's voice was grim. But you need to see this. I am patching you into the Rimfall public feed. Now. A holographic display shimmered to life in front of Jace. It was Rustway Station. The gutter. But it was not the usual chaotic marketplace. It was a protest. Thousands of people. Humans, Mira, Zeker, dozens of species, all marching, all holding signs. Jace's blood ran cold. Dismantle the Epsilon web. No more hunters, no more keys. We will not trade one tyrant for another. The feed focused on a human mechanic, her face smeared with grease, screaming into the camera. We do not care what he calls himself. We do not care if he is human or Jareth. Nobody should have that power. Malak was a monster, but at least he was one monster. This hunter holds a knife to all our throats, forever. We demand the network be destroyed. Now Jace cut the feed. The balcony. Silence was absolute. He looked at Sarai. Her face was pale. The realization settled on him, cold and heavy as a shroud. She is right, Jace said, his voice barely a whisper. They are all right. He looked at his hands. He was not a guardian. He was not a key. He was not a weapon. While he held that power, he was just another tyrant, another Malak, another empire. It did not matter what his mother had intended. It did not matter that his intentions were good. The existence of the power itself was the problem. His personal pain, his quest, his mother's ideals, they were all irrelevant. I cannot keep this, he said, the weight of the galaxy on his shoulders. I cannot hold this. I have to end it. The protest feed from Rimfall echoed in the silence of the high-orbit shuttle. Jace had demanded they take the regret. He needed the familiar smell of his own recycled air, the grit of his own ship. Sarai, respecting his silence, had agreed. Jarrow and his men had been paid, handsomely, and sent on their way, happy to be free of the galaxy's two most dangerous people. Now, it was just Jace and Sarai, hanging in the black, the holographic image of the Rimfall mechanic screaming about tyranny and human bombs. I have to end it, Jace said again, his voice raw. The words felt heavy, final. Sarai looked at him, her imperial poise fractured by a deep, human exhaustion. End it, you mean destroy it? The network? What else? Jace gestured to the screaming hologram. She is right. They are all right. As long as this thing is chained to me, I am just a different kind of Malak. A tyrant, waiting for a bad day. If you destroy it, Sarai argued, her voice quiet but intense. What then? The Concord hardliners who tried to kill you, the ascendants who are still hiding in my court, they win. They will just start again. They will build another Epsilon. The only thing holding them at bay, the only reason they are even listening to Rylea Varys, is because they are terrified of what you can do. So I am supposed to be a boogeyman, Jace snarled. A living threat, holding a gun to the galaxy's head for the rest of my life. That is not a life. That is a prison. It is a responsibility, she countered. No. It is a burden my mother never should have put on me. It is a power no one should have. He looked away, his eyes finding the sickly green nebula where Epsilon waited. I am going to destroy it, but I want to know why. The real reason, Sarai nodded slowly. Ambassador Varys. She gave me the key, the file from Project Aegis. But it is incomplete. The final partition was not in the data Malak stole. It is still there, in the mother node's primary, physical core. She said it requires 2 genetic signatures to unlock, the Empress and the Hunter. Jace looked at her. Both of us. She said it was their final failsafe, Sarai whispered. A message. From them, he fired the engines. The regret turned its patched-up nose back toward the dead planet. Epsilon was quiet. The monstrous organic growth had ceased. The station was no longer a seething entity. It was just waiting. Jinsert, as the network's master, felt no resistance. The defenses were silent, the oculi sentinels dark. He commanded the station, and it obeyed. He landed. The regret in the same cargo bay he and Sarai had first entered, what felt like a lifetime ago. The silence was heavier this time. They walked the familiar, scary corridors. The nursery was dark, the shattered vats standing as grim monuments. Jace's new senses were a low thrum, guiding them, parting the bio doors before they even reached them. They reached the core. The tank where Malak had died was now clean, the fluid a calm, neutral white. The massive brain of the mother node pulsed with a steady, slow rhythm. Jace's rhythm. "The console," Sarai pointed. "It is active." Jace approached the interface. "It is locked. The final partition. It is waiting. For us," Sarai said, standing beside him. "You first." Sarai placed her hand on the console. The Jareth bioport lit up, recognizing her bloodline. Empress heir Thalia Keth verified. "Now you," she said. Jace placed his hand on the console, next to hers. The machine hissed. It did not need a port. It read his cells. The entire core lit up, the light shifting from white to a soft, golden glow. Hunter Unit Epsilon 734 verified. Aegis Protocol unlocked. A holographic image, sharp and stable, bloomed in the air between them. It was not one woman. It was two. Alara Arden, Jace's mother, in a white lab coat, her face bright and full of a fierce intelligence. Her hair the same unruly brown as his. And standing beside her, tall and regal in a Jareth formal robe, was Empress Thalia Keth, Sarai's mother. They were not enemies. They were not allies. They were colleagues. They were smiling, a shared, private joke passing between them. They were in this very lab. But it was clean, new, and full of light. "If you are seeing this, Jace," Alara Arden began, her voice so clear, so real, that Jace stopped breathing. "It means well. It means everything has gone to hell. But it also means you are alive, and you are here. And if you are here, Sarai," Empress Thalia said, her voice the same melodic, authoritative tone as her daughter's. "It means I have failed. It means Malak, or those like him, have taken the dominion, and that I am dead." The two women looked at each other. "But," Alara continued, "if you are both here together, it means our gamble, our last desperate hope has paid off." Jace stared at the image of his mother, his heart a cold, tight knot. "We lied," Alara said, her voice soft but firm. "We lied to everyone. This was never Project Hunter. That was the name the hardliners used, the name we fed them. This," Thalia said, gesturing to the lab around her, "was Project Aegis, a shield. Not for Concord, not for the Dominion. A shield for the galaxy, against our own governments." Alara stepped forward. "The Concord, Jace, my people, Section Omega, they were pushing for a first-strike solution against the Dominion. A genocidal plague. At the same time," she glanced at Thalia, "the Ascendants were perfecting their own bioweapons to cleanse the human colonies." "We were patriots," Thalia said. "But we were not fools. We saw our empires, in their paranoia, becoming monsters. We had to create a failsafe, a circuit breaker, someone who could stop the order, if it was ever given." "We needed a guardian," Alara said, her eyes finding Jace's, as if she could see him across the years. "Someone who belonged to both sides, and to neither. Someone with the Jareth mastery of the bio-network, but with human stubbornness. The capacity for illogical, moral choice." Jace felt his knees weaken. "But we could not create a guardian. We had to ask." "I asked you, Jace." The image flickered, replaced by a new one. Jace, 8, sits on a lab stool. He was small, but his eyes were bright. "They want to hurt people, Mom," the small boy asked. Alara. "Yes, baby. A lot of people. They are scared. And they want to use a very big weapon, Jace, like in the vids. Alara. Yes, and we need someone to be the off switch, someone to protect them. But it will be difficult. It will mean you have to change. You will be stronger, faster, different. But you will be alone. The small boy was quiet for a long time. Then he nodded, his expression serious. I can do it. I'll be the guardian, Mom. I'll protect everyone. The image returned to both women. Alara Arden was weeping, silently. But she was smiling. You were not a victim, my love, she whispered. You were not an experiment. You were a volunteer. You were our hero, the bravest boy in the galaxy. Jace was not breathing. His entire life, the narrative of rage, of victimhood, of a boy stolen and broken, was all a lie. A lie built on a foundation of love. We knew they were closing in, Thalia Keth said, her voice grim. Section Omega, they panicked. They learned what we were really building. A guardian they could not control, it terrified them. They decided to liquidate the project, to erase their mistake. They used Melek, Alara said, her voice hard as steel. They gave him fleet clearance. He had to test his enzyme weapons. They were to blame the Zareth for a containment breach. They murdered Cygnus 4, Jace. They murdered your home to hide their own crimes. I tried to stop them, Thalia said. I could not. I could only prepare for this, for you. I locked the final protocols inside the mother node. I tied your biology, Jace, to the core of the network. But I built a final firewall. One keyed only to my bloodline. Alara looked at her friend. We sacrificed our names, our reputation, I as a traitor, her as a weak empress. We did it so that you, Jace, would be free. Free, Jace whispered, his voice breaking. Yes, his mother said, her holographic eyes burning with love. The network is tied to you, but it does not own you. We did not build a weapon. Jace, we did not build a slave. We built a choice. The hunter is not a function. The hunter is a decision. You are not a key. You are not a guardian. You are my son. And you are human. Whatever else they did to you. You are human. Choose. That is all we ever wanted. Choose. The recording ended. The chamber was silent, save for the low, steady pulse of the core. Jace was on one knee, his hands still on the console. His head bowed. He was not weeping. He was rebuilding. His entire past, his entire identity, had been vaporized and reformed in the span of 3 minutes. He was not a victim. He was a promise. Sarai was silent, her own tears tracing her face. Aegis, she whispered. My mother. She trusted yours completely. Jace finally looked up at her, his eyes clear, the old, weary rage gone, replaced by something heavier. The weight of a choice, freely given. You're your test, he said, his voice rough. In the bar. Sarai took a shaky breath. She did not look away. Yes, I knew my mother had hidden the final judgment in Epsilon. I knew it was the only thing that mattered. When I found you, when I realized the key was a man and a human, I was terrified. So you goaded me. It was a cruel test, she admitted, her voice thick with shame. But it was the only one I had. If you had died in that lab, then you were not the guardian, and all hope was lost. But if you survived, if you were him, then I had to trust my mother's gamble. Trust me with what? With this, she said, gesturing to the core, to the Empire, to herself. I knew if you were truly the guardian, you would judge me too. If I became Malak, if I became a tyrant, you would be there. You would be the one to stop me. That was their plan. A check on all power. Jace stood up. He felt the network humming at the base of his skull. The silent, waiting power. He could take Sarai's surgical strike option. He could reach out and crush Section Omega. He could punish the Ascendants. He could fulfill his revenge. He looked at the empty space where his mother's hologram had been. Choose. He looked at Sarai, who was watching him. Not with fear, but with a terrifying, absolute trust. He remembered the protest. Nobody should have that power. They were all right, Jace said, his voice quiet. My mother's guardian, and the mechanic on Rimfall. A guardian protects. And nobody should have this power. He turned to the console. Jace, what are you doing? Sarai asked, a new panic in her voice. You are not going to destroy it. It is the only thing. I am not destroying it, Jace said. His fingers did not type. He thought. He interfaced with the core. His mind and the machine, one and the same. He began to rewrite the fundamental code of the entire bionetwork. I am recording it. I am taking the gun out of my hand. What are you doing? I am fulfilling my mother's promise. This was never meant to be a weapon. It was an aegis, a shield. He plunged his consciousness into the web. He felt every dormant node, every sleeping weapon, every hidden synapse across the galaxy. He did not destroy them. He repurposed them. He turned the bioplagues into antidotes. He turned the neural locks into open communication relays. He transformed the entire network, in the span of 30 seconds, from a sword into a shield. It is done, he panted, pulling his mind back. It is a defensive grid. It can stop plagues. It can warn of invasions, but it cannot attack. But the trigger, Sarai said. You still hold it. No, Jace smiled. It was the first real smile she'd ever seen on his face. It was tiring, but it was free. I do not. We do. He entered the final line of code. I have slaved the activation protocols. Not to me, not to an Empress, not to an Admiral. I have uploaded it to the public comnet. The entire network, the Aegis, can only be activated by a majority consensus. A public vote from the citizens of any sector under genocidal threat. No more hardliners in dark rooms, no more regents. If they want to be saved, or if they want to go to war, they will have to ask the people who are about to die. They have to vote. He took his hand off the console. The hum in his head was gone. The connection was severed. The weight was lifted. He was just Jace. A man who was too strong, who healed too fast, but who was no longer a god. He was just a man. Sarai stared at him, her mind grappling with the sheer humanity of the act. The audacity. You just gave it away, she whispered, in stunned disbelief. My mother said to choose, Jace said, flexing his free hands. I choose. Let's go home. The galaxy changed, faced with a superweapon they could not control, and a populace that was suddenly, furiously, empowered. The hardliners on both sides found themselves without leverage. Ambassador Rilia Varys, armed with the full Aegis data, forced a complete restructuring of the conquered Special Projects Division. Sarai, in her first act as crowned Empress, did something even more radical. She ceded 100% of the Jareth Dominion's imperial power. She dissolved the monarchy. She stood before a joint assembly of conquered and Jareth worlds and proposed the Aegis Treaty, the formation of a new joint galactic council where humans and Jareth sat as equals. Their first shared asset, the defensive network Jace had created. The Ascendants and the conquered hardliners were furious, but they were powerless. The people, armed with the vote, had taken their power. Jace was not at the ceremony. He was on Rimfall. His new shop was small, tucked away in a quiet sector of Rustway Station. The sign read, Arden Biological Solutions. We clean up what they leave behind. He was calibrating a coolant injector when the door chimed. Sarai stood there. She was not in robes. She wore a simple, dark traveling suit. She looked stressed. "You are leaving," Jace observed, not looking up from his work. "You are not," she replied. "This is my home. It smells right." "Besides," he shrugged, "the new Aegis Council needs a citizen representative from the Rimfall sector, someone to keep the professional politicians honest." "A very enhanced citizen," Sarai said, a small smile playing on her lips. "It helps when arguing over zoning regulations," she laughed, a real quiet laugh. "You humans, you are terrifying. You get your hands on the literal power of a god and you give it away." "And you Jareth," Jace countered, finally looking up at her. "You get your hands on an absolute galactic empire and you vote to replace it with committees. It is madness." "I suppose it is," she said, her smile fading, the old weight returning. "We are both mad." They were quiet. The old tension, the suspicion, was gone, replaced by a shared, weary understanding. "I will be in this sector," she said, a little too formally, "for the next few months, inspecting the new diplomatic channels." "Diplomatic channels," Jace repeated, a slow smile dawning on his own face. "Right. Well, try not to eat. I hear the local wildlife is monstrous." "I will try," she said, her amethyst eyes holding his. "But if I do, I suppose I know who to call." "I am just a janitor, Your Highness. But I make house calls." She turned and left the shop. Jace watched her go, then turned back to his work, the smile lingering. That night, he stood at the main viewport of his small station, a mug of synthetic whiskey in his hand. He looked at the star-dusted black. He had a comlink open to a single, locked coordinate. On the screen, the ruined, silent hulk of fallen Biolab Epsilon floated in the void. The new council had declared it a monument, a tomb, a quarantine zone, all in one. It was no longer growing. It was just a scar. Jace looked at it, and he felt no rage. He felt no pain. The nightmares were gone. He was not haunted. He was not a victim, weapon, or key. He was a son. He raised his glass to the silent wreck, to the two women who had gambled the galaxy on a single, stubborn, human choice. He was not chained. He was not a slave. He was, finally, just Jace. And he felt watched over,